Good evening, Barbados. Wake up, Barbados. Wake up. This is three. Part three. Barbados. Wake up. This is Marcia Weeks, and you are watching the Marcia Weeks show, and we are coming to you live from Barbados. And I am here to announce that Barbados, the people of Barbados, that you're waking up. The sleeping giant is up and alive and well. Welcome to those who have joined me. And please tell me where you're watching us from. This is a very important show. Tomorrow, there is something that is happening in Barbados. It's the island-wide sick out is happening in Barbados, and we're going to hear as we go on further in the program exactly why this is happening. Why are employees in Barbados involved in an island-wide sick out? What is going on in Barbados? And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. But before we go there, there is I know people watch me and they're of different faiths, but I want to read a scripture for you from the Bible, which is the book that I read from my faith. You might choose to read from the Quran or from another book. But I was going to read a scripture, and after I read the scripture, and we go through what we are talking about tonight, you would see why it is so important, why this show is so important, and any person of faith, in the world, regardless of what your faith is, there's always a scripture that tells you, how you are to treat the poor. And we just want to remind the Barbados government. Hi, Pedro from the Pedro Marietta Ford from New York. Yes, hi, Deborah. Yes, Winston. Deborah Smart from the Netherlands, early in the morning. Right, Deborah is actually on. Hi, Deborah. Good to have you. Good to have you, Deborah. But we want to remind the people of our government in Barbados of how important it is, the way we treat the poor, how important that is. And the people, the people in Barbados, that we are very much aware of what is happening, and we are waking up. We are waking up. The Bible says the people of the land have practiced extortion and committed robbery. They have oppressed the poor and needy and have extorted from the sojourner without justice. I'm here to tell my audience that our politicians here in Barbados, they are treating the people without justice. There is no economic justice for the people in Barbados. They have oppressed the poor and needy, and Ezekiel 22 verse 29 talks about that. Ezekiel 16 49 says, behold, this was your guilt. You have, there is excess of food and prosperous ease, but did not aid the poor and needy. You did not aid the poor and needy. These two bills that the Senate is setting to pass tomorrow will not aid the poor and needy in Barbados. And that is why we're on this show tonight, and we're saying to share this to every Barbadian. Proverbs 28:27 says, who gives to the poor will not want, but he who hides his eyes will get many a curse. Do not rob the poor because he is poor, or crush the afflicted at the gate. The politicians in Barbados, they're crushing the poor. They're crushing the afflicted at the gate. A righteous man knows the rights of the poor. A wicked man does not understand such knowledge. The portions of scriptures that I'm speaking on are scriptures where the rich is exploiting the poor. And that is what has taken place in Barbados. This is what has happened. And this is why we're appealing to the Senate. Those that are in the Senate that are supposed to pass these two bills that will afflict the poor in Barbados, those that are most vulnerable, those who are elderly. We are appealing to our senators this evening. Those two bills are oppressive. The bills are saying that in order for us to get a pension, we would need to retire at 68 years old. There's an increase in contribution from to 750 from 500. However, our parliamentarians can retire at 50, 18 years earlier than the average employee. That is the oppressing of the poor. And that is why we are on here tonight, and we are appealing to our senators to let your voices be heard. I'm going to ask you tonight, we're going to try, I know some people want to actually call, okay? So you can call, here's the number right there on my screen, 1246-236-7000. And Barbadians, let your voices be heard. I want you to come on tonight and speak as though you're speaking to your senators. You want to use the show to send a clear message to the senators. What do you want to say to your senators? This is a very important show. Very important. Winston is asking, are you all prepared to stay home tomorrow? I know Miss Lynette Eastman, I see she's put out a sign saying she's closed for business. How many more employers are going to do that, and how many employees are not going to go to the are not going to go to work tomorrow? Will stay home tomorrow to send a clear message to our senators. Here they are, right there on the screen. That's our senators right there. And we want to send a clear message to this group of people. Don't take Bajans for granted. Do not crush the poor in this country. As you share, we have with us, I'm going to ask you to keep sharing, guys. If you're on, one of the things that you can do, if you're not calling in, you're sharing. You're sharing. This is too important for Barbados at this time, regardless of the party that you're part of, because this has happened over a long stretch of time, and various prime ministers came in and tried to fix it. But this is the worst that it is, because they went ahead and people gave money into the NIS, and now that there's a problem, what have they decided to do? They wrote off the debt. Wrote off it. It's as though somebody borrowed somebody stole from me, and I went to the judge and I said, this person stole money from me, and then the judge says I have to put it back. Extortion. Crushing the poor. That's what that is. Yeah. Yes. Hi, Pedro. Hi, everybody that's watching. Okay. So let me just welcome. I'm seeing in the green room, Mr. Caswell Stewart is here. So get your pen and papers ready, guys. Miss Maxine McLean is here as well, and they are getting ready to come right in with you this evening. So please share up the live, and get your pen and paper ready. Yeah, get your pen and paper ready. We're ready. We're ready. We're ready. We're ready. We're ready. Yes, folks, share up this live. Share up this live. Share up the live. Okay, let me just I think Mrs. Stewart seemed to be still getting ready. Let me know if you're ready to go, guys. And as they're preparing, share up the live. Yes, like and share. Margaret Holder. Hi, Margaret. Sharon, I shared. Listen, this is a Barbados. Tag somebody, use the @ put somebody's name there and let them see it. Yes, yes, this is too important. This is too important. Are you staying home tomorrow? We could come on here and we could listen, and this become what, like another brass tacks. But listen, there's a call to action here. The call to action is that tomorrow we're staying home. All right. Okay. I think our guest is ready. Hello, Mr. Caswell Stewart. How are you doing?
Franklin,
You're still looking fresh, and I don't understand. I mean, I know your phone is ringing off the hook, but you're still fresh and looking young and ready to go. What's going on?
it seemed as though that was a permanent condition of mine because when I was a little boy, they used to tell me, you're trying to be fresh. So I've stayed that way.
Oh
So I've,
wow.
I've stayed that way.
Well,
It's
we're
good to have,
getting so many. Yes, go ahead.
no, it's good to have a little levity because everything that's serious, really serious is going on around the people in this country. And the more I look at this legislation, the more abhorred I become. Because, first of all, let me deal with national insurance. There are two pieces, national insurance and then the pensions amendments. Government had two goals for the national insurance. One, to be able to control the jobs in national insurance so they can give jobs to their friends. Because, let me explain. If you are working in the public service, there's something called the Public Service Qualification Order. And you have to have the qualifications in that order to take a particular post. Now, I know of people who work in statutory boards and other government companies who didn't have the commensurate qualifications that they have in the public service. But the qualifications
Hmm.
order only applies to civil servants, not statutory boards and not the government companies. So even though a company could, or statutory board might have qualifications for a job, they're not enforceable. You can decide, well, okay, I don't care what the qualifications say, I will hire this person. As I've seen, I can tell there was one general manager of a corporation in Barbados, National Housing Corporation. He went into that corporation that needed degrees and all kind of stuff. But the only thing he left school with, as I said, was his empty lunch box. He didn't have any qualifications whatsoever. But because these qualifications are not enforceable, then you can put them in. In the public service, you can't do that. So what they are trying to do with the national insurance is to make sure that the board, national insurance board, can hire people. Before, our Bauer, in his wisdom, decided, I don't want the national insurance board dealing with personnel issues. I want them to concentrate on managing the fund. Let the experts in personnel deal with the personnel issues. So at Section 11 of the National Insurance and Social Security Act, it says that these people are deemed to be public officers, and the minister responsible for public service will determine the amount of posts. That's how it's done in the public service. So
Hmm.
the people working at national insurance are public officers, even though national insurance itself is already a board. So when they're talking about they're going to corporatize it and make it a board, it is already a board. And everything that they put in the new legislation, the new amendments, can be achieved under the old ones. So the only
Right.
difference that the old legislation has from the new one is that National Insurance Board can now hire people. And with that, you can bring people, but only the empty lunch box, because you can bring in whoever you want. No training in national insurance business, no qualifications, anything. You can bring them in, and that's what the boards can do. That was one aspect of it. The other aspect of that now is to, after crashing the national insurance scheme or have it under collapse, they want you to pay for their errors, their blunders, their mistakes, their graph, whatever it is, because I can keep repeating this because I was on that pensions committee that was reviewing national insurance and pensions rather back in 1989, and it was determined then by an actuarial report that national insurance fund will go bust by 2035 if nothing happens. You have to fix it. You have to do something to get more reserves into the fund. Mind you, I was of a contrary view. At that time, I was saying, well, you said 2035. And I was telling the committee all the time, but look, I'm still a very young man. You need more people. And I was willing to volunteer to give them some help to get some more people, but nobody took me on with that one. because you had 35 years to do something about it. And by this time these people have been 34, 33, and that kind of stuff, and they will be working in jobs. The problem is that you might not have jobs for them. But that would have been another issue. So what happened? It was coming up to elections in 1989, 1991 period, and the then Prime Minister decided he ain't touching that stuff because he don't want to come a political side. So it fell upon Owen Arthur to come into office and move with gusto to fix the National Insurance and Social Security scheme and the fund.
Like he should. I mean, because he went in there to serve the people. So he should.
So what he did, he changed the pension formula so that when you calculate what your pension would be, you would get less pension than you would have been entitled to under the old calculation. That means more money was stay in the fund. He raised the contribution rate, and he then raised also the maximum insurable earnings, meaning that the people at the top would extend it so that more people would be captured or more money would be captured in to the fund. That was working well. And then the fund was improving, showing its worth. Again, politicians can't help themselves. Once they see money, they're going to put their hands on it. And the biggest problem with national insurance, and will remain the biggest problem with national insurance, I don't care what dispensation you have or what rules you do, unless you take the minister out of national insurance decision making. I'm talking about investments of the fund, because they can invest and they have invested in things that national insurance shouldn't have invested in, and things that national insurance should invest in, they stay away from. Like, for instance, national insurance had shares in Light and Power. And Light and Power make enough money all the time. You will always want lights, and they sold them. And then put the money back to get 0.1% interest. That's another issue for another time. But what the government has been doing is to be abusing the National Insurance Fund. I remember when I was a member of the Senate, and an issue came up about building a fire station using National Insurance funds. I complained bitterly, and I was assured 2 years ago that the National Insurance Fund was capable of handling it. They were washing funds and all kind of stuff, which was not necessarily the truth. But they were saying that to just counter what they were saying, because building a fire station has nothing to do with national insurance. So national insurance has built police stations. They are building a fire station. They built the building at Warren. But two buildings at Warren. One building where the electoral office is, on top of the hill there in Warren. And then they've also built the Baobab Towers. All of this is out of national insurance funds. They're saying now that the government will rent those buildings from national insurance. I don't know if they're paying the rent but in our government is not used to paying bills. As a matter of fact, they already took 1.2 or $1.3 million out of the National Insurance Fund. Then they said they're going to give it that haircut. Remember when the government decided they're going to not pay their debts and write off on loans? Their national insurance was in jeopardy then. And why would you then take over $1 billion out of the National Insurance Fund when it was in jeopardy? And it was in jeopardy to your certain knowledge. They didn't care, because you know what they know they will do? They will go and take advantage of the people who have been paying into the fund. Now let me explain something to you. What will happen to people like that? You pay the National Insurance Fund, and you know that you have contributions that you will get a pension, because you only need 500 contributions. You immigrated. You're going to work in Russia, Bali, Singapore, wherever you feel it going. Because you know your old age, if nothing happens and you don't make it big, you can still come back to Barbados and live on your pension. Now you got to come back to Barbados and work for 4 years, almost 5, or not, you will lose that pension. You will not get a pension. This is what they have done. They have raised the amount of contributions from 500 to 750. This is going to put a lot of people in jeopardy. And when
a lot of people.
Because I worked at National Insurance myself, and I have sat there and seen people who had 499 contributions didn't get a pension. Mind you, it don't work so for politicians. Once the politicians short for a couple of weeks, they change the law so they can get theirs. But what is horrendous about the politicians and the pension service and the pensions in the public service is that they have the best arrangements anywhere in the world. Politicians in Barbados have to serve 8 years to qualify for a pension. That pension is half of their salary. But you don't always have to be in the House, because if you remember the Senate not getting a salary, and then you go into the House, those years that you didn't contribute to your pension scheme, if they add those 2 years, the ones in the House and the ones in the Senate, you will still get a pension that half the salary you have gotten. But they do that for each other. So you have taken a situation where politicians make sure they feather their nest, and they're wetting everybody else's nest. You know, when you didn't want the fowls to hatch, you throw water in the nest. Well, this is the government doing with us.
Yes.
No people. They're wetting our nest. They're keeping theirs warm and good, and they're feathering it, but they are holding on to pensions. Look, they take 8 years to get a pension, to qualify for a pension in 8 years. Public officers have to wait for 10 years to qualify for a pension. But the politicians qualify for half their salary after 8 years, while the public servant qualifies for 1/5 of their salary after 10 years. It gets worse. Don't shake your head yet. It gets even worse. 33 and the 30 years. You know, you always hear people talking about, oh, I got my 33 and the 30 years. All that is really is the time that you will qualify for your maximum pension. Politicians qualify for their maximum pension at 12 years. 12 years for the politician, 33 and a third for the other people. The other people in the public service at statutory boards is 40 years. Yes, yeah, I tell you, you're looking shocked. You have to work 40 years to qualify for the maximum pension, while MPs have to work 12. If you call what the work. Right? And they have now extended people's retirement age on to 68, while they had reduced theirs back in 89 from 55 to 50. So their ages keep coming down, while the civil servants and the government workers at statutory boards will keep going up. And you know, when they challenged Colin Jordan on that on brass tacks, he said that, oh, the Prime Minister is thinking about raising it. Well, think about raising yours first.
That hold a minute there, Mr. Franklin. That's what I was saying today. I sat and I thought about it. I said, if you care about people, you saw what we just did, what we just went through in COVID. So many people lost their jobs. A lot of people lost their businesses. People are live. It's tough out here, Mr. Franklin. Very, very tough. If you have your ears to the ground and you're coming with such a measure, don't you think you should lead by example? The first thing, the bill that you should bring out here is something. It is the one that is affecting you. Yours, you should have yours all the way down to the 68 like everybody else. And I guarantee you, if they came out with that first, people would be upset, but not as upset as they are right now. You know, yeah. Go ahead, sir. Okay,
I
you're
wouldn't
muted.
be.
Yeah.
No,
Okay. Hold a minute. Go repeat because you were muted. Go ahead, sir.
I said I wouldn't be upset at all. My problem would be solved because I was saying they are in it with us. And
Yes.
but look, I'll give you an example a bit outside of what we're dealing with now. A couple of years ago, the Comptroller of Customs and Chief Immigration Officer contacted me to say that they wanted to discuss security at the ports and stuff. And I went on to the meeting and they were claiming that they want to do lie detector tests. And I said to them, I have no difficulty with lie detector tests, but we're going to start at the top. If you want the customs officer to take a lie detector test, you ask the cabinet to take them first because they have more opportunity to be corrupt than any customs officer. You know, they may get back to me yet.
So you told them to start at the top,
Yeah,
right?
start at the top.
They want to bring a lie
Lead by
detector.
example.
Lead by example. Lead by example. Nobody can ask for anything. Other than that, better than that. Lead by example, and that's what they didn't do in this situation, guys. And that's why we need to go make sure that you're part of the island-wide sick out tomorrow. And this notion that people are putting out that they're scared and they might get fired and etc etc. I want you to address that a little later in the program, but that is not true. Go ahead, Mr. Franklin, please.
I can deal with it now because I think I don't want to miss. I don't want to let it slip by. You know, because things have a way of passing. I'll tell you, I listened to brass tacks today, and I heard the concerns about people gonna have to get sick certificates and all kind of crap like that. If you were sick on Friday and you call in sick on Friday, you will be deemed to be sick till you get back to work. So if you call in sick on Friday, you'll be treated as being on sick leave Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, if you call in sick on Wednesday. So if you call in sick on Wednesday and you were sick on Friday last week, all those days will be treated as sick leave. But that is not the case if you were not sick on Friday and you call in sick only on Wednesday. The other thing that people are trying to scare people about is that they're saying, well, if you don't think they will not pay you because you did not come, and the law says that you would get paid if you don't work before the bank holiday and after the bank holiday. That is again not true. There's no such law. What happened there is that during agreements with the union, BW when they used to function, encourage companies in their collective agreements to do that, to pay people who were on these bank holidays if they were working the day before the bank holiday and coming to work the day after. That was a union agreement that applies to people who are members of the union under a contract that says so. Most other employers do not follow that. I was at a store, a shop, I'm not going to call the name, the last set of bank holidays that we had, and the cashier, somebody mentioned to the cashier that they going to have a happy bank holiday and all kinds of stuff. You guys have a happy bank holiday? I know what nonsense we're doing because we are already paid and we don't get paid for bank holidays. So people walk around the place spreading a lot of false information, trying to, rather than get the government to deal with the issue, they get their minions to come in and try to demonize me. I'm tired of people of that nonsense because they have not achieved it so far. I don't take it on. So they can find something else. Up to today, I saw something that said that I'm a member of the Barbados Labour Party, you know, on Facebook. You know, they're doing everything possible to try to hold me up in a bad light. No, the BLP people thinks that being a member of the Barbados Labour Party is a bad thing. All right? So they are trying to, they're sure that that's a bad thing. I was a member of the Barbados Labour Party years ago.
I mean, come on, it's a small country, it's a very small country. It's only two major parties. So you either part of one or the other. Come on, we need to get
No,
with
no,
it and
but
start behaving like it's
I have not been
sports
a
or
member of the
something.
Barbados Labour Party since joining on after time. But of course, now they want to say that oh, I misleading people, and so they are. But mind you, my point is that they are trying to make out that being a member of the Barbados Labour Party is a bad thing. Now, if it's a
Mm-hmm.
bad thing for trade unionists, it has to be a bad thing for Tony Moore. It has to be a bad thing for the young lady at Kimberly, whatever her name is, at NUPW. So if it is bad for me, and I'm not a member, why shouldn't it be a bad thing for them? Because I don't know if Tony Moore was in the house, but she could not sit down with a straight face in the house and say that these measures are good for the workers of this country. No way. You know, another aspect of this thing that is troubling, going back to the public service pensions, you are not going to be required to pay part of your salary into a pension fund administered by national insurance. And your pension will be paid from that. That is what the IMF asked to do for years. The
Mm.
IMF was saying to them, no, they got to make people pay toward these pensions and stuff. And so the IMF got its way. This is what this is all about. But what they did and what they don't, and what they're actually making sure that you don't get any pension, Because what
Mm-hmm.
happens, right? If you start working after the 1st of September 1974, any pension you get from the government will be reduced by the amount you get from national insurance. And so only the people at the top will continue to get something because national insurance pension usually wipes out the pension that you would get from the treasury for people at the lower levels, below $5,000.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not working for $5,000, when you apply for pension from national insurance and you get your government pension, the government pension will be cancelled out. So you will get nothing. You will be paying into a pension scheme that will not give you any pension. This is what this government is doing to you.
Mm. Mm. So what is it that we want? We said we're gonna be doing the sick out tomorrow. What is it that we want? Is it that we are saying to the senators and those who, if you know a senator, if you know any of those senators, please send them the link to the show. Please send them this link. This show is designed for them to hear what the people are saying and the concerns of the people. What are we
No,
saying to the senator? Yes, go ahead, Caswell.
look, the senators, there are 21 senators in Barbados.
Mm-hmm.
Ideally, two would be appointed by the leader of the opposition, and the government appoint 12, there are seven or so, would be then appointed by the president. But because we don't have any opposition, the president is allowed to appoint two more. But they can never outvote the people who are not appointed by the prime minister as senators on their recommendation are always in the majority in the Senate. The only time the Senate can stand up is if they're going to amend the Constitution, because then they need the support of people from the opposition or the independent senators or both. to pass it because you need 2/3 of the membership of the Senate, and they don't have that. That is why the Integrity and Public Life Bill wasn't put to the vote last time. But mind you, they're saying that the senators blocked it. The senators didn't block it. They heard inklings from some senators that saying I ain't supporting it. Not that anybody got up on the floor and said that they were not doing it, and the government didn't do it. So they never put it to the vote. They never tested it. And they didn't have, because when the vote was put, there were not enough people to pass it. It would have failed anyhow. The government wants that bill to fail and then blame it on somebody else because they don't want to declare their assets. See, because there were 13 people in the House. And you need 14 people to vote yes to pass a constitutional amendment in the Senate. But they didn't have 14 people in the House. So if you didn't have 14 people, why did you put the
Why did you exactly? But
Because
they
you didn't
seem to,
want it
to
to pass.
always be playing these games, you know. But tomorrow, this is a very very serious thing. Now you're saying that from what you're saying, it seems as though this thing, because of the numbers are against us. So what are we really saying here?
So
Um,
we are trying to sensitize the government that the people of this country do not support these measures for a number of reasons, but mainly because they were not brought to them and said, well, look, this is what we plan to do. You are not dealing with idiots. The people of this country are educated to the most part and understand things. So if you are going to bring something for my benefit, tell me what it is. Let me explain it to me so I can feel good when I say, but you know something, the government got a point. I even though I don't like it, but I can see nothing's going to happen. They are trying to hide this thing. These two bills will take effect on the 1st of January 2024. Okay? Listen to the 1st of January 2024. You're going to give the country a month to debate this thing around the population. You had to pass it in an emergency type setting in one day in the House, and then come and try to do the same thing in the Senate. Huh? Why is it so important to pass it and then put it down to wait? Because they were going to pass, they would have passed it on Friday, and you had Saturday, Sunday, bank holidays were jumping up and that kind of stuff. Nobody would be worried about what's going on in the House or the Senate. So it was carefully designed because you had a Senate, you had a House session on Friday. You met on Tuesday. There's no state of emergency. There's nothing that you had to do with a deadline. Yeah, the deadline is the 1st of January 2024, so you rush into it. In July, you got August, September, October, November, December. 5 months.
So you're saying because I heard you made this point before, and I think Ms. McLean also made the point that they normally meet on a Tuesday. And is that it? And so, but they went ahead and they met again on the Friday before the bank holiday. I want Barbadians to listen to this. Listen. This is not any conspiracy theory. Listen carefully, and let me just bring in Miss McLean on this. Miss McLean, who has been in government, and as I said last night, we are not here promoting any political party because, as far as I'm concerned, this is where we're at is a result of all the years. The problem is how these are dealing with it right now. That's the issue. So, Miss McLean, what Mr. Franklin is saying. Can you shed any more light on that? Do you agree with what he's saying? Can you concur?
In terms of what exactly, I want to be sure what aspect of what he's saying.
Yes, in terms of the fact that they would normally meet on Tuesday. Why is it a normal thing to meet on Tuesday?
It is. Yeah. Okay. Yes, it is a normal thing to meet on Tuesday. Parliament meets on Tuesdays. That is the House of Assemblies. The Senate meets on Wednesdays, typically the week after, to debate a particular matter. and it is not unusual to meet on other days, but what is very unusual is, and if I note what Caswell was saying, that you're passing legislation which effectively takes effect, which goes into place in the first instance. The pension amendment bill, which relates to the public servants, applies to those persons who go into office from the 1st of January 2024, right? The other one you're talking about, and it was interesting that I heard the Minister of Labor come on the radio after hearing your program or being informed about it to say that these changes are going to take effect over time. But there's so much more to this. As I listened to Mr. Franklin this afternoon on brass tacks, and I've done some research, and I hope I'll get a chance to speak to those things. The long and short of it is there is no need, or there was, and there is no need to rush this legislation in the way they did unless they were trying to avoid a serious debate. And let me explain what I'm saying to you. As I listened to the debate and I observed what was going on in Parliament, you are passing two pieces of legislation which are important. And I think I made this point on this program, and I certainly made the point today with Mr. Blackman on the radio. Two pieces of legislation that will impact every single worker in Barbados now. But between the two of them, one is it going to impact the public servants twice, and the other one, other workers. The government purported to go to the public and, as they say, consult widely on this national insurance revitalization. I was trying to pull up some information on that as I was listening, but I'll go back to that and I can hopefully find that and tell you. So they say they had gone and consulted. Now, if I consult widely and you're trying to get inputs from the public, don't you go back to the public and share what you have distilled from what they said? And because you're going to distill that in part of the form would be legislation, share the draft legislation with the public, get their feedback. How do I know that anything that anybody said or suggested appears in any of this? Now, so first of all, there should be multiple consultations to solicit inputs, the incorporation of those inputs into legislation or any other policy that you're proposing, and you share that with the public, okay? And they can say, okay, I've looked at the legislation. This does not represent. I'm just distracted by somebody saying, Maxine, those are speeches, not debates. I'm not sure what it was, but I'll try not to be distracted. What the debate would come. I've just lost my train of thought by looking at what Pedro said, but I'll try to come back.
What he's saying,
I was making a speech or something. Okay,
no. What he's saying is that what they do in Parliament, because there's no opposition.
Speeches, okay.
They don't
and
debate.
I will come to that. I understand now. I understand. So the point is that they went to the public, supposedly soliciting inputs. And for some reason, they rushed into Parliament. And I want to say something about the process, because the process, and Kazo would have heard my thoughts on this. I think I might have shared a bit of it with you before, and I've shared some more in this afternoon. But if you are serious about what you're doing, why is it that in relation to the National Insurance Amendment Bill, why is it that this bill was first introduced on the 25th, which would have been Tuesday, and you had the first and second reading on the 28th, which was Friday? For matters that, according to Minister Colin Jordan on the news since your program on Sunday and yesterday, he is saying that these changes will be implemented as far as a decade out. So what's the big rush? Are you trying not to debate? And the interesting thing, Marcia, I will put this on the table. I might be all over the place because there's so many things here. How many members of Parliament, given that the government controls 30 seats, how many of them sat through these debates? One, how many of them contributed to the debates? Two, and to what end? Because I took the time to go and watch the debate. And what I realized was that to me, there was none. There were not even speeches of any. I have to go and see exactly how many, but I can recall hearing very much. And I know the media carried a clip from the Prime Minister, but I noticed that when I watched, for example, Mr. Minister, what's his name, Strawn, I did not see the Prime Minister present. In fact, it forced me, and I'm happy you put it up. If you could expand it at some point, I know I sat and listened to that session, which was 43 minutes. And in listening to that session, you had 43 minutes, which went from a discussion of the pension amendment
Before you
bill,
do that,
which,
sir, let me.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
which related to the pension amendment bill, which talked about the contribution, the public officers being employed after the 1st of January 2024 having to make contributions of between 2 and 5%. But of that 40 something minutes that you had there, Minister Strong got up. He spoke a bit about the contribution of Mr. Jordan, and I will have to come back to that. He then made his he lauded Mr. Jordan for his ministerial statement. He then went on to say a little bit, but in all, he spent, and I looked at the time, the clip shows you the time when he started and so on, and I looked at the time, and he did not spend even 15 minutes on the pension amendment bill. So having listened to him, I cannot tell you, Marcia, or anybody, exactly beyond saying that public servants joining will pay. I need to have a definition of what they mean, because the public service has employees who are permanent, who have been appointed. They have employees who join the service and are temporary for what seems to be a permanent period of time. We know how, and this has gone on for decades and decades. A person might be working for 5 years, 5 months, 15 years, and temporary or whatever the case may be. Now, if you look around this room, and as you brought it up, I count about less than half the members of parliament sitting there at the time when he was debating that pension amendment bill, and they were getting ready to pass the two pieces of legislation. I also want to note that beyond the 15 minutes that Minister Strawn spoke to this bill, no one else spoke on the bill. So there was no discussion, no speeches, and certainly no debate, as the person who commented earlier. There was no discussion. Now, my question is, how serious can this administration and individual members of parliament be that you have two pieces of legislation and you use the excuse, and I referred to it when you invited me on Sunday, and you use the excuse of having a single debate, which they call a cognate debate because they're related matters, to rush in a very cavalier fashion. That's the only way I can describe it. A very cavalier fashion. This very serious legislation, two of them, through Parliament. So what it was, that's that problem. I want now to go, Marcia, and say something to you and Barbadians about the issue of the other bill that Mr. Jordan, the Minister of Labour, would have led off. Now, if you go back to that, because that was the first piece that was dealt with first, and it was this Mr. Strawn used to say, well, it's a cognate debate, and we had a debate on what Mr. Jordan did. My question is, did we really have a debate on the piece of legislation which was about the National Insurance and Social Security Amendment legislation? And the reason I'm saying so, and I would read it here for you, I might have done it before, but I'm going to do it again. When you want to know what a piece of legislation is about, you go to the beginning of the document, which has objects and reasons. And this read as follows. This bill would, A, amend the law relating to the system of national insurance and social security by establishing a body corporate to administer the system and perform the functions relating to national insurance and social security hitherto administered and performed by the Department of National Insurance, and B, provide for related matters. Now, in the context of this bill, the first thing that I read, those four lines and two words at the bottom of the fifth line, say basically, and Caswell spoke to this bill is about speaking to or addressing or setting out the changes to be made in the administration, the legal structure, and operations of the national insurance scheme, which will hitherto, after this legislation is passed, or henceforth rather, will be called the National Insurance Service and Social Security. Instead of the scheme, it will call it service. And as Caswell pointed out, we have, and I think I mentioned this previously, and certainly in other places, we have a hybrid situation which does not require the urgency with which they brought this, because at the end of the day, you have a structure. Essentially, the anomaly that there was that you had an entity operating as a board, but it also certain functions, the staffing functions of national insurance stayed within the public service. So in other words, employees of the national insurance scheme as it is now would have fallen under, I believe, not only the rules of recruitment and selection, but also compensation. And Caswell can nod yes precisely. There are there are two sides to most coins. And for this coin, one, people often argue that the nature of the national insurance scheme, because you were talking about a over billion plus fund and financial decisions and whatever, some people argue that the salaries that were paid because they were civil servant salaries were not attractive enough. However, the thing about the civil service structure is that there is greater, what I would call, control of decision making in relation to personnel, and the lesser likelihood of people being treated unfairly, with political changes and so on. Caswell spoke to that about the persons going with the empty lunchbox, etc. On the positive side, it is felt that if you can have persons, the board control them, the positive is that you probably can take the salary scales away from the public service and offer more competitive salaries and so on. But none of that was spoken to in the ministerial statement. In fact, what I was looking for, and I'm trying to operate between the computer, my cell phone, and my tablet, trying to pull up information, and I will come back to this, but I'll tell you, the ministerial statement, it says the title was Ministerial Statement on Revitalization of National Insurance Scheme. Quite interestingly, the consultations, from what I have, my research has been showing me, was that this was the term that was used about the revitalization. So in other words, the minister and his colleagues and the prime minister and so on as Minister of Finance, they went around this country. I don't know, I would have to get the details of how many meetings were held, perhaps how many people turned up, how many people submitted information. That's the kind of thing that we probably should have heard of in a serious debate. This revitalization exercise, where they were soliciting the views, hopefully should have generated a report. So if you are issuing a statement on revitalization of national insurance scheme, where is the substantive report that informs the 9-page statement made by the minister? Because in essence, normally, again, I didn't sit in the House of Assembly, but I know how it works. And I sat in the Senate, where we had to deal with matters that came up. I was leader of government business, and therefore it was my business to know how these things work and how I had to function over the 10 years that I did it. Now, if, as I said, there was this consultation on revitalization, the output from the exercise should have been a revitalization report, right? Normally, as I started to say, in the way things work, such a report would have been laid in Parliament, and would have been laid in Parliament, And the public would have been able to scrutinize that report to find out, one, did they capture in any serious or comprehensive way the inputs? Did they take on board those inputs? Did they argue why they didn't? In other words, let us see what has been the impact, the outcome, the contribution, where our contributions are located, and so on. Now, I have not heard of a report. I don't know if one was done, but we keep hearing the minister certainly in the statement talked about wide consultation, and others have mentioned wide consultation. So my concern really, Marcia, is that in terms of process, this thing is severely flawed.
Mhm.
And it really begs the question, if it is so serious and it was so urgent, why is it that half of the parliament was missing?
Mhm.
And certainly missing to me at a time when, to me, one of the more important decisions of the process, that is where you're voting on these things and so on. So I realized, because I went to check when I first saw how scant the room was, and I raised it this morning with Mr. Blackman on the calling program. I asked him, I said I would need to know whether the sitting was quorate, but as I observed when I went to the standing orders of the House of Assembly, a quorum is 9 persons, including the presiding officer, which would be the Speaker of the House. So out of 30 people, 21 could have been absent and the business could have gone on. And looking at the room, we weren't far from a 21 being missing. And that is a sad thing, And so,
Yeah, especially for something this important that affects so many people, that are poor people, and that is the thing. This is so important, and they only spend 15 minutes. And look at the room. Look at the room, Barbados. Look at the room. Look at Parliament. This is it. This is
you
it.
know,
How many persons? One, two, three, four,
4,
five,
5, 6, 7, 8,
six,
9,
seven, eight,
10,
nine.
11, about 11, and there may be somebody's hand I'm seeing in a corner here. So in
Right.
essence, what you had, and I would be generous and add 2 or so that I can't see if they are there, but I know the configuration of the house as well, so I can kind of count the number of seats that are not visible. The optics of this thing is atrocious, and I'll tell you why. You are telling the public that we should be comfortable with you rushing a bill to Parliament, certainly in relation to the national insurance bill, that you did not follow the rules. I checked, and I mentioned it on Sunday, that when I looked today while I was holding on to talk on the call-in program, the bill at the time that I checked was still not gazetted as found in the online edition of the Gazette. The official Gazette is found, is done by the government printery, and they have an online thing where you can find. It was not there yesterday. It was not there on Sunday. It was not there then on Friday. And so nobody who happened to hear about this could have read that bill, um, using that source as a means of finding it. So my question is, this is so urgent, so very urgent. And you are going to tell me you're not even sitting in there to speak to it. And then you compound it by saying, well, we're going to rush this. And I recommend people listen to Minister Strong, because at one point he said that, and I will shuffle through my papers, I might find his comment. He made a comment to the extent that he was in essence in a hurry. Oh, this is what he said, because I took the note. I'm a good note taker. As he was speaking, referring to the bill, he said, I do not have the all the time, sir, to go through it when people were getting 2 pensions and all the long leave and all the different things that happened. The reality is twofold, sir. On the one hand, our national insurance
Mhm.
effectively is a national pension, whatever. No, he's telling me he doesn't have the time to explain, because if it is something of importance, explain it. Don't tell me you don't have the time. If it's trivial, you don't have to speak to it. So in essence, I'm trying to rush this bill to tell people, and do it on a Friday afternoon, because I guess everybody like, I hear people complaining about members of parliament and so on. I don't know about others, but I work very hard in the years that I served the people of this country. And so I can understand sometimes when you're meeting in parliament, but as it looks now, I guess they take turns in turning up. and not speaking. So, they turn up. Some of them, they might be on the precincts. And I will tell you this, Marcy. I mean, I am passionate about this because I think that when you're called to national service, I know people used to say, no, but I vote for you, and certainly didn't. And I would have been better off perhaps doing something else in terms of remuneration and all that. And we could talk about that, but that's not the issue. My thing is when you're called to serve, you serve. And in a case like this, I remember when I was leader of government business, people used to say to me, the person, one of the main spokespersons for the opposition, say to me, why don't you ask your members to cut it short? I said to him, we are speaking to the people. We are speaking to these debates. And anybody who checks on the former debates in the Senate would realize that we spent a lot of time seriously addressing matters. So when I sit and listen to less than 15 minutes, not of some routine amendment or some minor alteration to legislation, but legislation that's going to impact on Barbadians in the way that this is, and this is what we see. And then we're going to say we had to do this because it's urgent, but not urgent enough for people to turn up and contribute.
To turn up. And this is the part I tell you, Mr. Franklin, this is, and Ms. McLean, I don't know, it just irks me. The disregard for Barbadians, the disrespect, just the lack of care. Look how scanty this place is. And this is so, did they realize how important this is to Barbadians? I don't understand. And I want to say to Barbados, listen, I know I'm not Norwegian, but let me tell you something. Don't do this again. Don't give nobody 30 seats again. Look at this. You now have no opposition in there. Nobody to debate. They're having he just gets up and he speaks for 15 minutes for something that could affect you for so many years and your generation. And this is how they treat Barbadians. And for some reason, I tell you, Mr. Caswell, that thing irks me, annoys me to believe this is, look at this. 15 minutes is what he used to give a speech on something so important, and then give you a holiday for you to walk up and so on, and then for tomorrow for the Senate, because they know they know they have the majority. So then the Senate is going to for the Senate to go and pass the bill tomorrow. Huh?
I just want to say something because I really have been going on, but I feel very strongly about this. You see, because at the end of the day, what is happening, Barbadians don't have a voice. But I really want to ask the question: what exactly did the people? And I can't remember his name. I remember the comment about speeches versus debate.
Pedro.
What exactly did people speak on? Because if the bill that was passed in relation to the national insurance spoke in large measure to those changes, I didn't hear Mr. Strong speak to those because he was very happy to say that this was a cognate debate, meaning a single debate, but a single debate does not mean a shortened debate or a superficial treatment of the issue. And I think that for something like this, which is going to impact the lives of people, they owe it to Barbadians to say, look, this is what we're doing. First of all, they owe it to us not to rush this kind of thing. And I'll tell you this now, because I think I can pause and let Caswell and other people speak, because I can go on this because it angers me. I don't speak for as somebody said to me today. It was, in fact, Mr. Blackman said to me today, because I held on for 2 hours and 20 something minutes on brass tacks this morning to lunchtime. Jokingly said to the producer, the guy who answers the phone, that I can make breakfast, which I did while I was talking to him, but I could have cooked lunch too. But I held on because I felt it was absolutely critical that people's voices be heard on this matter. Because, and I want to say publicly now, Marcia, thank you for doing this program, because if you did not do it, this legislation would have passed, and we would have woken up those who went partying yesterday and today would wake up tomorrow, and I can bet you that by 4 o'clock, the Senate would have gone through this unless the independent senators decided that they needed to speak, and we would have heard of something. And people, in fact, I will say this, the person on the call-in program today was not even aware that 2 pieces of legislation were passed yesterday on Friday.
You
He
see?
was not aware, because I listened, and that's one of the things that I felt that I could not afford to hang up, especially after hearing Caswell speak to him, because Caswell made reference to the contributions to be made by public servants from January 2024. And Mr. Blackman was not even aware, because obviously he might not have had a chance to listen to the debate. And there was no big discussion of that. Nobody spoke to it. Nobody explained why. Nobody explained the impact of that on their current pension arrangements. They didn't explain how it applies to different categories of public workers and so on. And they were glibly going along, disrespecting Barbadians, as you said, and passing legislation which is going to impact. I am one of 4 generations of McLeans. So I'm a pensioner, and I am at the age, I can say publicly, I'm 67 years old. So Caswell, I qualify under the current legislation. You understand? And I you understand? But no, and I made my contributions. As I said, I made my contribution. I started work in like July 17, 1974 at the welfare department. And I was making national insurance contributions till I stopped working. Right? And the point is that there are 4 generations of us, 3 of them coming after me, that I have to protect their interests. That's my immediate family, but my family is also Barbados. So when people treat us with this can't respect, high disrespect, let me put the flip side of it. You have to get worked up about it.
Yeah,
So I really think that the government needs to stick a pin. Now, I noticed, and I believe Mr. Jordan has been talking, and I heard it on the radio since you did the program about public education. I remember it was Emmanuel and others who talked about that these are the things, before you do it, educate, explain, bring the legislation, let those who felt the need to have contributed to any national dialogue and town house meetings, etc., see if their contributions made the light of day. Let us see if you're improving the system. But I think I've said a whole lot. So I'm going to pause. And,
somebody just said, that they have been taking notes, and the same thing with me. I'm old fashioned, and I have a book right here, and every night I'm learning something new from these 2 here. From Caswell. Caswell last night was full. And it really, really bothers me, as I said, that this is something I said, I'm not going to jump in it. I'm tired. But when I sat down and I thought about it, and I said, no, but this is disrespectful. You can't treat people like this. This is unjust. This is wrong. And as busy as I am, I don't normally come on at night. I had to, Mr. Franklin. Mr. Franklin, I see Lynette is on, and she has another slant of something she wants to share, and sent around a very powerful voice note. But before she comes, I want you to say to Barbados exactly why you're calling for this island sick out tomorrow. To just let us get a little bit of that, because we don't want to lose sight of that is tomorrow. Why should they do it? Okay, you're mute. Okay, let me unmute you. You need to unmute. Yes.
There's not much that the population can do, right? They don't have, other than protest, the actions of the government right now. And this is just a form of protest to let the government know that we do not support what they're doing. We are aggrieved by it. And we were hoping that the senators, they will see that the people are serious and then send it back to the people, because right now it is not a fair complete. They can still have these consultations. They can still do everything else before this actually is debated and passed in the Senate. You do not give the Senate the last words and think that this is going to be it, and then everything is going to shut down. I want the people to know that we are not happy. The people of this country are not happy, especially when they realize that this is going to affect them. I gave an example to somebody today. And I give it to Walter, yes. let's say you left this country having accumulated enough money to contributions for a pension. Let's say you have 500, you can get a pension. You left, you went elsewhere to seek your living, and there's no arrangement with that other country that they can use their contributions for here, like because they can do that for United States, United Kingdom, Canada, I think, and some CARICOM countries. But let's say you went to Russia, Bali, Singapore, some place like this. And then when you come back to Barbados, you realize, no, the system now you have to have 750 contributions. You know, these are things that people should be made aware of before you pass this type of legislation. This should not be a surprise to people.
Mm-hmm.
And people, I want people to show their disgust. I want the people to tell the government, we know that you have all the seats, but because you have all the seats, you don't have all the power.
Correct.
And that we want you to behave in a manner that will reflect the best interests of the people of this country. What this legislation has done is to reflect the best interests of the people in Parliament and the best interests of the IMF, because those are the two people who will get their way. Nobody else.
Mm-hmm.
You are hurting the people in this country. You are hurting, and the thing is, you are hurting the poorest of the poor, because the people who earn these fantastic salaries, they don't need to apply for national insurance. And in a lot of cases, they have other pension plans that they can use to supplement their pensions when they reach that age. But people in the public service at the lower levels and have a home and family to maintain don't have any excess cash that they can buy new pension, other pension plans. So their only pension will be the national insurance pension, because the government has made sure that you will not get any money from the treasury. And because they're going to wipe out the pension that you would have accumulated by the national insurance pension. So you're going to be paying for a pension that you're not going to get any money, but you'll be pensionable, but you're not going to get any funds. You're not going to get any money at the end. All this is wrong. So I want people to be aware that this is what their government is doing for them. But you remember they said, give me the vote and watch me. We are watching. That's one of the reasons why I have spoken up, because I am watching. I have stayed quiet for a long time because I said, well, look, the people are happy. They gave them 30 seats, and then they turn around and give them another 30 seats. So I said, well, the people must have been happy. So if they're happy, why am I going to get involved and try to push, change things? Because they're blissfully ignorant. And the government is doing what they want to do. But this one, I cannot sit down any longer and say, Caswell, let them go do what they're doing because the people are happy about it. But I'm sure the people didn't understand.
That's the thing.
What the government has done.
That's the thing.
And if they're still happy in the end, well, so be it. But it is unfair. It is unreasonable. And I want the people to tell the government that we realize it is unfair and this is unreasonable. But what you can do, you couldn't arrange a demonstration on Tuesday because you have to wait the police officers that deal with these things closed on the weekend and on bank holidays. But we wanted this thing done before this legislation is passed. So the only thing that we could have done is to say, well, look, call in sick. Let the people know by your absence that you are not pleased. Because if we start demonstrating among the police can pull us off the street because we didn't get permission, and you couldn't really, even with a union that doesn't really need to have public meetings and stuff, to have permitted police permission, you still have to be sensible enough to tell the police, well, we need your assistance on the road because you can't walk on the road and manage that big crowd with police protection. So we had to find a way to talk to the government because they're not listening to anything else. But you remember when you had your marches, the things happen. Government responds. So we're hoping that they respond. We're hoping that they respond to the people saying, well, look, we are not happy with what you're doing.
Well, Mr. Franklin, I am saying, because listening to what you guys are saying tonight, and you are the guys, you are the ones with the knowledge that with just the way the Senate is made up, it seems as though they're going to pass it. And if they do, I'm saying to Barbadians, what are you going to do? So we'll do the sick out. The sick out is to register the way that we feel, and we're hoping that we're hoping that senators there will decide that they're not going to let it go through. We can only hope and pray. But if it happens, listen, Barbadians, begin to think that once you hear that Mr. Franklin is going to hit the streets, make sure you come out in your numbers. Numbers matter. And they don't want any, trust me, I tell you, in our for marches, we have been called, as I told you before. They don't want you to protest in this country. It's going to look bad on them international, because the thing is that, oh, they have this beautiful little thing going on here with these little people, right? And so on. So they don't want us to protest. But let me tell you something. Listen now. You listen social media, or you listen now what's going to happen in here if they go ahead and pass it. And any senator listening tonight, I want you to listen carefully. The people are speaking, and listen to what the people are saying. Okay? And I'm not trying to tell people to go burn down any place and any violence, but because Bajans not going to do that. I'm saying to you tonight, listen to the people and don't take the people for granted. Because if you go and pass that bill, remember you heard from the people tonight. Remember. Okay? Let me just bring Miss Lynette Eastman in at this time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Marcia.
Yes,
Let me
Miss
see if I
Eastman.
can. Right.
Listen, I sat down and I listened. Welcome. Where my manners? And I like I did with Miss McLean and take all these notes. I was listening to your voice note, and I sat down and wrote out that smaller than the voice note. I made so many notes from that voice note. You guys are educating Barbados, and I love it. I love it. And you're from all different walks of life and different professions, different associations. But I want to thank the three of you, and also, of course, we thank you for that voice note, and to commend you that you have closed your business for tomorrow. Isn't that true, Miss Eastman?
Yes, that's correct.
Wow. And
So,
why have you done that? Before you start, why have you done that?
well, I'm not in a position where really I can call in sick because it's my practice.
Mhm.
So in order to do what I can do, I decided that we would close for tomorrow, and in solidarity with those who will call in sick or whatever, because I figured you had to do something. I wanted to do something to
Why
show
you
my
want-
displeasure. And
why you wanted to do why is there so much displeasure that you would lose a day of business? Why?
now so this is what my voice note was about as well, because there was a budgetary statement in 2022. It was delivered on March 14, 2022, where the proposals for reform were set out. And it was just a list, but in looking at the list, I thought that I saw things in it which I became really annoyed about. And I actually had a discussion with one of my colleagues. I said to them, well, I feel like marching about this. This was back in August. And I wrote something.
I mean, August when? Last year?
2022.
Oh.
2022. Okay. And I wrote something on it. I posted it as I usually do. I think about 14 people liked it, and there were some comments, but maybe because it was not in the form of legislation, it didn't get that kind of response. Now it is in the form of legislation. People are really seeing the reality of it. But it talked about the reforms, and I was able to find it because I had downloaded it And it says part of our comprehensive plan towards pensions then is to make the NIS a statutory corporation and more independent from government in its operations by the end of 2022. So it says, and more independent from government in its operations. So that is something I noted. To recapitalize the NIS, require it to diversify its investments at home and abroad, and ensure that where private projects seek public support, they give the NIS the choice to invest. So those things worried me because I have some understanding of how statutory corporations function in practice. And I know that the history behind them is that it was felt that the civil service was too complex, too many rules, everything you have to go to parliament. Because how the estimates is done, people would make a joke of these things, that during the estimates process, if you want a clock, you have to put that in the estimates. So then if you realize then that you could do without the clock and you wanted a kettle, you couldn't get the kettle. You couldn't just shift over the funds. If it's a clock that the Ministry of Finance approved and the Parliament, well, then that's what you were supposed to get. So people used to make fun about that, but I guess to some extent you can understand that they're saying we need more flexibility in doing certain things. So that's why, for example, like tourism was probably one of the first things, those kinds of entities that had some kind of commercial aspect to it. Those became statutory corporations. But then we also have a history of how statutory corporations function. And people complain all the time about the fact that they don't file financial statements. It goes on and on. Each administration or each person who expresses a concern will say they haven't filed, but they're not up to date. But then you just continue saying that every year or every 5 years or whatever, they're never up to date. The other thing is that with a statutory corporation, what happens is that, of course, the whole board changes whenever there's a change of government. And what I think, the conclusion that I have come to, now there's some ministers who would actually ensure that they have a permanent secretary sitting on those statutory corporations to ensure that you still have the oversight of the civil service. But of course, that's not necessary. This is if you have a minister who understands the role that a good civil service plays. Now, I will segue to make a little point about the civil service. I recall having discussions with, sometime I was in South America and there was somebody doing research, and Barbados came up as an issue as to why Barbados was so stable. And she pointed out to me that in her research, one of the very important things for us is our civil service, that you attract quality people, the politicians come and go, but you have high-level, high-quality civil servants working for the country who, yes, they might have their political, they go out and vote, they might support a party, but they understood that when they're in their role, when the minister came, that they were supposed to guide and support that minister, whether they voted for the party or not. And she identified in her studies that that was one of the very important things that kept Barbados stable. Now, I know that there has been over time, and maybe it started with when His Excellency Errol Barrow said there's an army of occupation. But I know that over time there has been this a campaign against the civil service. And I say this within the context and a person who criticizes aspects of the civil service all the time. I mean, I do that all the time. But even though I do that, I understand the stability that of a well-functioning civil service that is not politicized plays in a small country like Barbados. So getting back to the statutory corporation and how they function, what happens in practice then is that there are many politicians who then expect the decisions of the board to be political.
Mm.
And that's a problem, especially with a national insurance fund, which they told me is my lifeline, and told every Barbadian, this is your lifeline.
Lifeline.
So this is a problem if it becomes politicized, whichever party is in power. So that's the thing about the statutory corporation. Then I go then to the last recommendation, which was to ensure that where private projects seek public support, they give the NIS a choice to invest. So I immediately saw that as, like my view of a national insurance scheme is that yes, it does invest because it wants to get a return on the money that we put into the fund. But there should be safe investments. The NIS should not be seen as the Enterprise Growth Fund or Fund Access. It's not that kind of fund. Those funds deal with entrepreneurs and deal with risky investments. I don't expect the NIS to do this. But then in this budgetary presentation, you had at point 4 that somehow the national insurance scheme is going to be seen as a place where you could go to get money for your private sector projects.
So hold
And I
a
don't
minute.
think it was intended to be that way.
Well, but
No,
Miss Eastman, let me just stop you there because I want to make sure that we understand this. Because after the voice note and I was taking the notes, I said, could they really be saying that, if you entrepreneurs who have ideas, that this would be a possibility of a way to take the people money and to put in some business venture, entrepreneurial idea. I mean, there's so much risk to that.
no. So I of course, I am interpreting this from the 4 points.
Yes.
But you will see it says, and that's why I read it, ensure that where private projects seek public support. Now, what kind of private project would seek public support? If one of the large companies in Barbados that we know wants to, for example, Old Simpson Motors wants to bring in a different type of vehicle or something, and they need to set up a new facility, you don't expect them to go to the NIS for that. But when you make that kind of statement, it suggests to me that you are clearing a path for people with their projects to come to the NIS, which projects could either succeed or fail.
Well, yeah. Wow.
Now, I mean, Caswell and Maxine probably know more than I do about the function of the NIS and its investments and that kind of thing. But to me that shocked me because I put the two things together. And then there's also the one of the other reforms is to diversify investment. And that sounds good. But then when people talk about diversifying investments, I kind of wonder what they mean, because I see the NIS fund as a fund that should be conservative in its investments.
Correct.
And then when you are going to talk about diversifying, what like diversifying into what? And Well, the reason that I would be concerned as well is because I know that with the Four Seasons project, that NIS funds went into that. And
Really?
when
So
you
and
pass
I
down with Four
the
Seasons
four
project,
season. Listen,
you see
I'm
nothing
not.
down there.
I'm not Bajan, so try and educate me, please. So I see somebody put a shock sign like me, exclamation here. So you're telling me the failed Four Season project that NIS money was invested in that?
Yes. And there's no controversy about that. NIS funds were invested in that.
Listen, the people who are watching, you were aware of that. This is the money that we have given them to keep, and they're making these risky decisions. It's invested in it, and I mean, didn't they close that off? I will have to ask Miss McLean about that afterwards because I
Okay.
am. Yeah, go answer quickly.
No, I am saying that there's been a lot of discussion about that. The and I think is perhaps an opportunity for chat. I remember speaking to that on one of your programs some time ago. The reality was that the Four Seasons project, which started around 2006, 2005, or something like that, was seen to be a significant investment for the country. It was billed as that, and I will say this because I don't know I have enough time, and I like to speak from facts. But
right.
you know
That
who
we
would know?
don't.
You would know who would know a lot about that because it spanned two administrations. It spanned three administrations. That project started. I am a Black Rock girl, so I remember when that site was cleared. And I guess I call it a premonition because I stood up there and I said to myself, because it was obviously like a open space, and I said, what if this thing doesn't pan out? But that started under a Nuenata administration. It continued under us when in 2007, 8, it ran into, well, 2006, 7, I think it was 7, it ran into trouble. The Professor Avinash Prasad would have been an advisor on that project. And I don't think it is a secret that the Prime Minister of Barbados, as she was then in opposition, was a legal advisor or something. So it's a project for which a lot of information is available. And I would want to be very careful as to what I said. National insurance money went in. There were debates in Parliament about it, certainly when we were in office. I can go and pull my cabinet papers to look and see the details. And I think it is something we should speak to. Recently, of course, though, I was listening to some casting of that as to how and when it started to suggest that it probably occurred sometime between 2008 and 18. I will say this. If you do some research on national insurance funds, Lynette was very correct. In the same way that a commercial bank, and more so when it comes to pension funds, the trustees, we are trustees, we are custodians. I served as a director of a bank and my credit union, and I recognize that the monies that you hold in trust pension funds are particularly critical. And so you have to look at that. Now, there are rules right now which govern how national insurance funds can be invested. You need to go read the legislation, look at the investment committee, the rules that govern them. What Lynette referred to, and I was trying to pull up the budget from 2022 in terms of the suggestion of going forward, that in fact constitutes a major part of the legislation that was passed on Monday, on Friday evening, in the House. Because if you're talking about restructuring the national insurance scheme, putting it under a corporate arrangement completely, because Carol spoke about the hybrid nature. When you look at putting that onto that new arrangement, my question really and truly is, because I don't know what transpired outside of 2008 to 2018, but while the minister had power, a lot of the minister that served when I was Minister of Finance could not go off by himself and make a decision by himself. The decisions of the board might have been overridden, but it wasn't by a minister sitting by himself, because we didn't. It was himself each time that I was around, in those 10 years, would have come to cabinet and shared what was proposed. So when you now take that away, because I've heard Caswell say that we should move the minister and government away, but let me ask the question: who are you going to put there? Because what you're saying now is we're going to take power and put it in the hands of some persons. Let me use an analogy that my fellow credit union member can refer to. In recent times, we've been talking about the credit union, and people have been saying that, and I think people have been trying to encourage the financial service, the FSC, to go down, the Financial Services Commission, to go down this road, that credit unions should bring in independent directors, persons who probably don't even subscribe to the philosophy of the movement. So when you remove some of the controls that the current obtained in the current structures and put them in the hand of some totally independent body, who controls who becomes a director of NIS? And as you say, it may be a case where the governments change, people may decide they want to move the boards and so on. And so you see, unless we have dialogue and discussion about the implications of those changes, and quite interestingly, there was no discussion of this on Friday. And I could bet you, and I know, Marcia, you may not be a betting person, but I can bet anybody, and I can't bet you more than $100, that what's going to happen was that there's going to be, well, maybe I can't speak for the independents, but I can tell you that the government senators, only a handful of them will probably speak. Well, more may speak now that they've heard what we've been saying, but they would have gone in there, and within 2 or 3 hours, they would have been out of the Senate.
Out of there. And you know,
no discussion. So I think what we just heard from Lynette has to is part of the case that has to be made, that we need, as a country and as individuals who are current or future beneficiaries and so on, and who are stakeholders in this process, we need to have more discussion.
yes.
What are you planning? Because what you were hearing, I mean, one of the ministers made reference to the IMF. Lynette just made reference to commitments or statements in a budget last year. And all of these things will form part of what actually happens.
And this is why when I heard her voice note, I said, wow, this is really powerful. In fact, Lynette, you had 4 areas.
Marcia, I need very quickly to correct Kent Lee McCollin. I am not sure that the Auditor General said in his report it had not been audited in 20 years. I can tell you that in 2008, it is not true. In 2008, what we found was a serious backlog of annual reports not being published. And I will say anybody can go and ask the director. He's still a public servant. He's moved out in the NIS, to tell us when there were significant delays, and because there were delays in getting those annual reports, but I wouldn't say it was not audited.
It wasn't. So it wasn't. Okay. But I want to give, thank you for that. I want to give Lynette.
Okay.
I wanted to let Lynette just continue, because she raised, I think there were 4 areas that you in this reform proposal that was presented, that was presented in August, and you dealt with, I think, 2 already. So
yeah,
so
no, 3. But I want to make the point that in terms of the 4 Seasons project, I find that I'm able to do it, but maybe, I'm able to do it, but I don't know if everybody's able to do it. But when I'm looking at an issue, I don't really be studying the dates and who was in power, because sometimes that distracts you from the point. The point is, and I heard this, I read this years ago from an Australian minister, where the government had put in place far more restrictions than we have now in terms of the powers which ministers can exercise. And he said that ultimately he found it to be a good thing, because when people came to ask for favors, he could say, well, I can't do that because the legislation prevents me from doing it. So it isn't a matter of saying, well, I will see what I could do. I would talk to the prime minister, that kind of thing. All that was out through the door because of the legislation that they put in place. Now, what that means then is that as a politician and a person who wants to be a member of parliament, you have to canvass on something other than promising people contracts and a job somewhere and all that, you know, it has to be your abilities, whatever they are, that you then canvas on, not on the ability to do these things. And you know, we continue to do that. We continue to run our economy based on favors. And you know, I say to people all the time, it isn't that in other countries that you don't have privilege and you don't have privileged people and you don't have people who maybe get through certain things because of who they are. But it is not the means by which economic development is pursued. Because for many people in Barbados, in order for your business to be a success, it is absolutely necessary for you to make contact with a politician. So in many other countries, they're not run like that. The ones, if you want to look at the Human Development Index, you would see that the countries that are within the top 10 are also the countries who are at the top level in the Transparency Index, which means a lack of corruption. So I'm just looking, every politician who has the ability to look into that insurance scheme and see that there's a lot of money in it is going to be tempted to interfere with it. So we have to put measures in place to ensure that they're not tempted. So there are four things. The other thing was to recapitalize the national insurance scheme. Now, at that point in time, I did feel that it was going to be largely the ordinary people of Barbados who were going to ask to recapitalize the NIS. And that is what has happened. And, you know, we in Barbados, and maybe middle class people don't want to hear this, but, you know, we talk about the lower classes or the poor people, and then we elevate to this middle class. But the majority of people in Barbados live off of their monthly checks. And you know, and they don't have a huge, they don't have all these assets set aside as people may think. They're paying their mortgage, they're running their vehicle or two vehicles, they're sending their children to school. And you know, it isn't for the middle class, it isn't like the next generation doesn't have to work. That doesn't matter if the next generation works or if they do well or if they're bright. It matters because they, you know, it isn't that they can put their children in some kind of position that even if they aren't bright, that they will still get through. So you're talking about when you're talking about this, you're talking about the majority of Barbadians, probably like 90%. You're not talking about just 25% of the population when we're saying that ordinary people will be impacted significantly by this. So recapitalization of the NIS, yeah, that's a big thing. When I think about it, I heard Caswell talking about the fact that I don't remember the figure that he said about money being written off. There are people who owe the fund money. There's money that was, I would even go as far as to say, the money that was taken out and squandered by simply paying fees to individuals. Maybe those people should also be asked to put that money back into the NIS. Then there are all kinds of issues that we can look at where we spend money for certain things. Where we spend a lot of money, thousands of dollars to do certain things in Barbados, like hold fats and stuff like that, at the expense of the Barbados government. And don't let me just say the Barbados government, the people of Barbados. Because somebody said in my conversation, our conversations today on Facebook, he said to me, I was talking about the contributions made by people, and he said to me that I'm joking, that the people don't really make any contributions, that most of the money comes from government. And so whose government? Is it that when you become a politician and you go into parliament or whatever, that somebody gives you a suitcase of money that you put under your bed that belongs to you and doesn't belong to the people of Barbados? All of the money that the government has belongs to us. We have a share in it. Every building that is supposedly owned by government, we have a share in it. So that whole idea about, oh, but the people don't put in money is a joke. The government supports the fund. It's our money. And I think that those are some of the things that we need to talk about more as well. So 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 those are the four items really. The
That's,
statutory
yeah.
corporation, the recapitalization of the NIS, the diversification into other investments, and basically to allow the private sector to get money from the NIS.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so
Marcia,
much. Yes, yes, jump right in.
could I just comment on some things that Lynette said?
Yes.
And, you know, one of the things she said that what she read, because it's not her thing, it's what she read. She said one of the goals was to make it corporatize the national insurance. All right, I'm hoping I got that correctly. And that means making a corporate body. I'm reading from the 1966 legislation, but national insurance was passed under Arabara. This has remained unchanged to today. It says the board shall be a body corporate, having perpetual succession and a common seal. National insurance has always been a corporate body. The only difference between national insurance and other corporate bodies was that national insurance was forbidden by its own legislation to hire staff. And that's Section 11 of the National Insurance and Social Security Act. It says, I can read it to you because I'm not too far from it. Section 11 says, the minister shall, by order under Section 2 of the Civil Establishment Act, Cap 21, establish offices which shall constitute the offices of the board's establishment, which offices shall for all purposes be deemed to be offices in the public service. And Barra had a reason why he did that. He envisaged that the National Insurance Fund would grow tremendously. And he didn't want the board to concern itself with housekeeping matters. He wanted it to be to invest and do the things that the National Insurance Act want the board to do. Let the human resource or the so-called personnel people deal with personnel issues. So the only thing that this government has done now with this new legislation, the only thing new is to give the board the authority to hire staff.
Okay. Yeah, Caswell, I take that point. And the point that one of the points that I was that I wanted to examine, which maybe you can examine as well, is whether this gives scope now with statutory corporations. The statutory corporations are owned by the government. Legislation talks about a body corporate. Now, is there a possibility then that this body corporate, because the way it was done before, where the board becomes a body corporate, I don't believe that anybody could really have shares in it. Is there now a possibility that this body corporate, because it says it's a body corporate, that people can own shares in it?
That is up to the IMF. They're running the place, not us. Okay? It's as simple as that.
So you see, because when you are running a company and your main objective is for the shareholder to make money, that is different from when you are running an entity with a social mandate, if I put it that way.
I think you should have talked to the IMF. They won't let you talk to them.
No,
because
they didn't. They didn't ask me for a meeting. I don't know if they asked you.
no, they didn't ask me, But that is what the IMF should be aware of. That is what they should know. That is what. But they go to the IMF with cap in hand and say yes sir, or yes ma'am, 3 bags full, and they do not put a case for Barbados. They are begging, so they don't put our good side. So when IMF asks you to get rid of certain things, I remember for all the years, every IMF consultation, the IMF wanted Barbados dollar devalued. No prime minister devalued it. None. Right? So because the rate on which the government pegs the Barbados dollar to the US dollar is fixed. So only the government can change it. And the government said no. We have a situation now where the IMF says we want these things done, and the government is going behind our backs to get it done because the IMF want it done. And they're not explaining it to us. They're not telling us what they need to do or what's happening to us. The IMF says civil servants should pay for their pensions, even though they were already paying. They may pay again. The government rushes to Parliament. I almost said in the dead of night, and take things to Parliament to satisfy what the IMF has asked them to do, without any consultation, really, with the people of this country that it will affect. It's not going to affect them, but I mean the MPs that sit down but I can't just sit down because they weren't there. I see Maxine conking them, and she count 12. I count so much, Maxine. I count 10. And I'm wondering if a person in the form of the General Secretary of BW was present, because this is a bill that affects every worker in this country. And I should have heard, but I don't listen to this. I must confess, I do not listen to the debate in the House because they don't ever collide with the topic that they're talking about. They talk all over the place, and not once do they get a glancing blow to the topic that is under discussion. So I avoid it because that thing irks me. When you hear them talking all kind of fancy things about what their constituency, but nothing about the bill because they have no substance. And they don't know what they're talking about, but they have to pass. And they have to do their master's, or in this case, mistress's bidding. Mistress say you want to pass this. And that is what I want the people to demonstrate their anger tomorrow, because she then can tell the Senate what to do.
Casual, the point that you make about, you underlined it by saying that the IMF would come and they've asked every prime minister to devalue the dollar, and no one ever did it. This is actually, I consider it to be a significant problem, not only in terms of what the IMF is asking, but in terms of what a number of organizations are asking us to do. And we're just passing the legislation to meet their requirements.
You're talking about the OECD?
The OECD, the Financial Action Task Force. I mean, I complain about it all the time. I think I'm a good corporate citizen, but by the time they finish, we will be so burdened with regulation that we won't be able to do any work. They're going to put Barbados out of business. But what I'm saying, the point that you make is about putting up some kind of resistance. I'm not saying that you're going to win on every point, but if you don't put up any resistance at all, it just encourages them to come with more. I also want to make the point that, remember, the Integrity in Public Life Bill has also been passed. So that is something that we have to look at. And I had a look at it, and Because you see, even if you were going to make the NIS a body corporate, making it more independent of the civil service, government, and whatever, if you had the correct structures in place, then to the checks and balances with respect to that corporate body, but then there would be less to worry about. But we don't have those things in place either. So that's why the civil service, as it was structured many years ago, actually was doing Barbados a good service.
Mm-hmm.
Even though now most Barbadians are convinced, they've convinced themselves that, and they've been deliberately convinced by other people too, I believe, that it is not providing them with a good service.
That is because they want to be able to control the service and do what they want to do, like putting their people in place. We have situations right now where the government does not understand what a permanent civil service is and what its value to governance of this country. Because if the government, let's say, collapses tomorrow, the country will continue to run with the civil service until the civil service can get a government put in place. No, but right now you have a situation where the prime minister has to determine who is the chief electoral officer. She determines who is the chairman and the majority of the people on the Electoral and Boundaries Commission. She determines who is the commissioner of police. She determines who is the chief education officer, the comptroller of customs, and every other government department. Mind you, in Trinidad, when they put similar provisions in place, that the prime minister must be consulted with these things, and the commissioners tell the prime minister, yeah, consultation means just that. That was Patrick Manning. We don't have to obey you. And he wanted to put a particular person as permanent secretary of the commission, but he's not our man. And the commission appointed the man they wanted to appoint. Patrick Manning took him to court. And the court ruled to consult it. That's all you're required to do, consult.
Yeah.
But it means that the prime minister makes the decision.
Yeah.
So you have a situation now where she came up with the idea that you can put senior civil servants on contract. Now this is the tail end of the wedge you get in. Let's say you have a senior civil servant contract. This senior civil servant is to advise the minister, give the minister independent advice. But my contract coming up, you're going to give me advice they want, or your contract can get with you. So that is what is happening in public service. They're destroying and dismantling everything that made us great.
Yeah. Wow. You know,
civil servants, we exported civil servants and teachers throughout the Caribbean. Now people are laughing at us.
Well, I can support what you're saying, Caswell, because when I was involved in trade negotiations at CARICOM and at the international level, we used to take great pride in the fact that it didn't, where Barbados was concerned, because we would go to meetings and you would hear delegations talking about how they had elections, so they weren't able to do X, Y, Z. Barbados was very proud that that was never the case with us. Anything that was coming up on the agenda, whether we had elections, who won, who in or who out, we were able to represent Barbados seamlessly. And that was because we had a civil service that whoever the minister was that came in, they would get a proper briefing and could go off and represent Barbados. And we were very proud of that. Now all of that is being destroyed.
Yeah. Yeah, I tell you, and this is why we're here. And thank you guys so much for the comment. As I said, I've been writing. I don't know about anybody else. This has been so educational. And Winston is come on, Winston Clark, and I want to hear he has a comment that he wants to make. And remember, guys, that you can use the StreamYard link and come into the program and share your thoughts. So welcome, Winston. What's on your mind?
Good night. Good night. Thank you for having me, Marcia. Okay, I want to address this because this is a pressing issue that affects every single Barbadian, all right? This proposed idea to raise the pension age to 68, considering that the politicians lowered theirs from 55 to 50, yet want to raise ours to 68. This proposal, without coming to the people of Barbados first, is an unjust, non-transparent act, which will undoubtedly leave the elderly struggling, all right? And not only struggling, but struggling to make ends meet and compromising their well-deserved rest after a lifetime of hard work. Firstly, it is important to acknowledge the fundamental principle behind pension schemes. The promise of financial security in old age, and that is what a pension scheme is about. Workers contribute a portion of their hard-earned income throughout their working lives, with the expectation that this money will be returned to them when they retire and not spent by any government and then written off. Raising the pension age undermines this social contract, as it forces people to work longer than they have planned and prevents them from enjoying the deserved retirement. Secondly, increasing the pension age disproportionately affects those who have physically demanding jobs or have health conditions. Many individuals in physically demanding occupations like sanitation service authority and general workers find it increasingly challenging to continue working at that age. The toll of physical labor on their bodies can lead to a higher risk of injuries and chronic health issues. By raising the pension age, we are effectively ignoring the struggles and hardships faced by these workers, putting their well-being at risk. Can you imagine a sanitation service authority worker at 68 behind one of those drugs? Moreover, raising the pension age neglects the importance of intergenerational equity. It is essential to ensure that younger generations have sufficient employment opportunities without unnecessarily competing for jobs with older workers who are forced to stay in the workforce due to an increased retirement age. By keeping older workers in the workforce for an extended period, we are preventing younger individuals from entering the job market and rendering their chances of progression and financial stability. Additionally, prolonging the retirement age undermines the concept of work-life balance. Many people look forward to their retirement as a time to spend with their families, pursue personal interests, and engage in activities that they were unable to do while working. By increasing the pension age, we are denying them the opportunity to enjoy these precious moments and forcing them to continue working while sacrificing their loved ones and personal fulfillment. Lastly, it is crucial to consider the socio-economic implications of raising the pension age. As individuals are forced to work longer, there is a reduced capacity for job creation and employment opportunities for younger generations. This can lead to an increased burden on social welfare systems, further exacerbate social inequalities, and can even lead to increasing levels of crime. What do you think will happen when young men have no legitimate means of gaining employment? Now, ladies and gentlemen, members of the panel, it is undeniable that raising the pension age is fundamentally unfair. It disregards the principles of financial security in old age, places undue physical and emotional strain on workers, and undermines intergenerational equity. It is our responsibility to advocate for a fair and just society, one where retirement is a time of rest, enjoyment, and fulfillment for all, not retire, then shortly die after. I want all of us to come together and challenge this unfair practice and demand policies that prioritize the well-being and dignity of our seniors. Barbados, together we can create a society that values and respects the contributions of every individual, regardless of their age. It is with this in mind that we call on the government of Barbados to be transparent and come to the people of Barbados. We advocate an island-wide sick out on Wednesday, July the 2nd, to show our disapproval of this secretive, non-transparent way the government is going about this situation. Remember, you are allowed 2 consecutive sick days without taking in a doctor's certificate. Please let each and every one of us play our part. Every single person has a role to play. Remember, this affects us, our children, and our children's children. Just one day. That's all I'm asking for. Thank you, Marcia. Thank you, Polly.
Wow.
Thank you.
Very well said. Very
Thank you.
well said, Mr. Clark. Thank you so very much for that and for coming in. And I'm seeing Mr. Strickland is in and wants to share something. And you have that opportunity to do so before we close. Mr. Strickland, I'm going to open your microphone and have you share. Welcome, sir. Let me see. Okay. Can you unmute your mic?
Thank you. Good night
Yes.
to the panelists. Good night to the listeners. I listen with great interest what is happening to an institution that I have been associated with for over 40 years. I did work with Mr. Caswell Franklin many years when we were downtown. It is interesting that we would have had town hall meetings held across Barbados in respect of the whole issue of pensions, National Insurance Fund. I addressed the town hall meeting at Alexandria, and at that meeting, I would have indicated that because National Insurance is a tripartite board, in that both the National Union of Public Workers and the Barbados Workers Union, they have permanent seats on the board who represent all employees in Barbados. The Hotel Association and the Barbados Employers Confederation, representing the employers of Barbados, sit on the board. The representative from the Chief Labor Officer and the Director of Finance sit on the board. It means that of the 9-member board, 6 represent special interest groups. And it's very, very fortunate that after we had town hall meetings, which might only have been window dressing, a decision has been taken of such that the people of Barbados, as it were, have had no say. Now, during the actuarial report, and this is something that I shared at the town hall meeting, during the actuarial report, it was stated that 1 out of 8 self-employed persons are actually paying contributions. Now, it meant that from the time we had around the 8% pay cut days, when there was a lot of downsizing and so forth in Barbados, there was very much of a shift from employed persons to self-employed persons. In 2020, again, there was a further shift. Nothing has been done, absolutely nothing has been done to capture that large block of persons who are currently employed, even though self-employed, and are not paying contributions. I actually made a suggestion so that from the perspective of the board sitting idly by and allowing whether the Prime Minister, the government, whoever, to make this decision, it is extremely, extremely unfortunate. I worked between 2020, coming back from retirement, to June, and there have been tremendous requests by individuals to obtain an early pension because there are a lot of persons who 60 years and over have found it difficult to find employment, those who have lost their jobs to be employed, only to find out that they will not qualify for an early pension because that reduction of 6% at that point does not allow them to have a pension of $243 per week. Now we've moved it from 6% to 9%. And we're moving it from 67 to 68. And therefore, there is tremendous psychological trauma in the lives of Barbadians as I speak right now, who are suffering in silence simply because they were looking forward to maybe qualifying at age 63 because they were near the 243. Now we are shifting the goalposts even further. And the thing about it is, with all that has been said in respect of Parliament, nothing has been said where the Prime Minister or any other individual can make this decision 4 years again down the road. In other words, 4 years down the road, another Prime Minister or some person can come and make that decision, overruling the board. And the thing about it is, while I think Caswell, you were saying earlier that the board does not employ staff. Right now, as I speak, the path is for the staff to now be employed by the board. So if
Could you just excuse me a second? Caswell had said that he couldn't hear. Is it
I'm hearing now.
okay? Okay, sorry about that.
thank you very much. Sorry about that, Caswell. One thing too is, while the staff are to a large extent are employed by central government, but there are a tremendous amount of contract workers, and I was one of them over that 3 year period. Now it means that all staff members, but both appointed and temporary staff members, will be facing the decision very shortly to opt whether to remain in the public service or to go with the board. And I can say to you that there is tremendous fear in the hearts of some of the staff members, because if what we are seeing, where a decision has been made outside of the control of the board, which I must repeat is tripartite, to make sure that government does not single-handedly do what they please, you can imagine what is going to happen with the National Insurance Fund. Now, I must go back to when it was being suggested or when it was being said by the Prime Minister, who were in opposition, that they were going to raise the non-contributory pensioners. I said boldly, and I paid the ultimate price, where I was engaged with elections, whereby I said, if the non-contributory pensions are given the kind of pension that they were being promised, it means that they would have had to raise the minimum contributory pensioners, and then you would have had to give all the pensions over and above them an increase. I did not know that when Arthur had made the same statement at the same time, but exactly what Mr. Arthur said, it came to pass. Because, in my opinion, it was like one of those promises that Jephthah made in the Bible, where he promised that the first thing that came out of his house, he would offer as a sacrifice, and end up being his daughter. We as Barbadians, the National Insurance Fund, was put on as a sacrifice for the political gains of individuals. And unfortunately, I must repeat, unfortunately, nothing has been said in Parliament whereby the present Prime Minister or another Prime Minister can go and make another decision to put us back to where we are. We have a serious falling birth rate in Barbados, and we have a serious aging population. And therefore, if the block of self-employed persons that we have at present are not forced to pay contributions, and the suggestion I made at the town hall meeting is one that I have not heard anyone on the board or anyone else attempted to look at. And this is almost a year now that town hall meeting was held. So, I'm really afraid for those persons, especially who were looking forward to an early pension, the 500 to the 750, personally, I do not have a big problem with that. Because between age 16 and 67, persons have enough time to put in 15 years contributions. And therefore, if we force those 700 people who by law must pay contributions, if we force them to pay contributions like when Arthur did many years with the ZRs and the minibus and so forth, there's a way of getting it done. And saying that the fund would not be depleted in the manner is because unfortunately a lot of these persons who are self-employed, they get the unpleasant surprise at pensionable age applying for a non-contributory pension to realize that because they chose not to pay contributions, they are not going to get a pension in Barbados. So I think that a lot needs to be said and done because, and I really appreciate the panelists and for what you are doing and saying for in respect of what happens on tomorrow in the Senate. I think it's going to be left up to the conscience of each person in the Senate after hearing and knowing what Barbadians have been saying since Friday. It's up to them to make a decision on whether they will vote yay or nay. But I think the National Fund department is in a serious position right now, not only with the public but also with the staff, and it's the institution that is very dear to my heart. Thank you very much, Ms. Weeks, for giving me the opportunity to share.
Marcia, could I say something, please? No, I wanted to say.
Go ahead, Ms. McLean.
Yeah, I wanted to say something. I really want to thank Mr. Strickland for coming in because he touched on the whole issue of employees of national insurance. And it takes me back to the point he was making about the piece of legislation that should have been addressed in Parliament. And nothing has really been said about that because at the end of the day, when I try to link contributions and when I think of a couple of things, the current structure and what it means, the possibility of moving away, even though we already have a corporate structure to the extent that, except for recruitment, selection, human resource matters, except for that, we have let me call it a company for simplicity, a corporate structure. Lynette raised the possibility of what was suggested, and in a sense, I am skeptical, or I am fearful, not skeptical. I am fearful that there has been no discussion because we have not been treated, or we have not been given information on what the plans are. And my worry is that there may be plans to address issues beyond staffing in terms of control of the financial resources, the fund, the money, which is the people's investment in their pension. This is, as to use the technical term, they call it a mortgage, is a long-term investment, expecting, your future return. So two things are happening. Staff don't know what's going on, and anything can happen. I remember, you can think of the Queen Elizabeth Hospital when that went to a board and so on. But here you have people, and it's interesting that we just heard, because we were talking about temporary staff and permanent staff in the civil service, but as casual, Stephen just introduced contract workers in national insurance. You say for the last 3 years they've been using contract workers, and the question is, what are the implications? So I really believe, and I would say this and stop quickly, we have to ask government to take this thing back to the House and talk to us, debate the bill. Let us hear what is planned. As Stephen pointed out, consultations were about a year ago about revitalization. Where's the report, the revitalization report? Can it, if there's one, shouldn't it be tabled in Parliament so that the public can have access to it? Do we know what the contents are? Do we know what the plans are? Because if you have a revitalization report, you have a ministerial statement talking about revitalization. That statement should share with us in summary form, just as you will have an executive summary and a document, a summary form what they're planning to do. But we haven't heard any about that. So we have all, as Barbadians, we have to be fearful about the implications. But the other thing, and I think that's important, is the point made about enforcement of the rules. National insurance is supposed to be compulsory. And we therefore have to say to people, you need to participate. 1 in 8, I think you said, on self-employed people contribute,
Correct.
you know, and that's a lot of money, you know, and then they want benefits later on. I mean, I have had to talk to elderly people who come and say, you know, how I am so sorry I didn't contribute. That's why I say to Barbados, don't entertain the idea of dropping out the scheme, because at the end of the day, as the jingle said over the years, it's your lifeline. But we also have to save them. We have to start by making sure that people pay.
But
I
I
was,
wanted,
you know, I
I,
was an employee. Just this one point,
yeah.
I was an employer some years ago when I was a lecturer at university, and the nature of the business was such that we had problems paying contributions on a timely basis. And God rest his soul, one of my colleagues, who was chairman of the board, garnished my university salary to pay the contributions of my little company. I mean, you know, he didn't even call me and say, Maxine, I'm talking about, well, I'm not saying anything evil. So Frank Ali was the chairman at the time. And I was more surprised when I got my pay slip to see that they had garnished my salary, you know, and it was, as far as I remember, the nature of the business was such that that was strange, but I let it be. You know, but so I'm saying that enforcement is important. It's important.
Mhm. Yes. Thank you, Miss McLean. Lynette, you were
Yeah,
saying, yeah.
I wanted to ask Mr. Strickland if it is because in the note that I sent around, one of the points I made was that when I first came into practice, somebody came to me from the National Insurance. I didn't call them, but I believe that they would see the attorneys, because usually attorneys are in the newspaper, and you know you have your names. So somebody came to me to talk to me about the National Insurance and encouraged me to join the scheme. So they weren't even forced in. I didn't feel as though I was forced into doing it. But you know, if when you're in business and you start business, you are trying to get the business going. You're not really thinking about national insurance. But you know, there's a way to know who has set up a business. Most people register as a business. So all the business names are there at corporate affairs. Those who have incorporated, those are there as well. So maybe if we could, you know, just meet people where they are, and that should be one of the functions within the NIS as well, that not only wait till people come in, but also go out to people. I think that that would be very useful.
Marcia, there's something I want to add or to support Winston on, because my thing dropped out when he was speaking, but he was speaking to the sanitation workers. Right now, I have several sanitation workers in my union, and they complain about bending down and picking up those cans and dropping them back off the truck. And it's on right now, they're 60, 65 going, and they're tired, they can't get it due, it is painful. Arthritis and all kinds of taken in already. But it is even bit more than sanitation worker. Could you imagine a police constable downtown see a fella run into a store and snatch a half of the things they run, and he can say, um, hold it, I'm the police. You're under arrest. He can't, and the fella run levy. You know what I mean? I am very serious.
No,
I,
it's
I
true.
might be I might be a little joke at it, but
But it's
you
true.
don't
It
want
is true.
67-year-old policemen. You don't want 6-year-old policemen. You want policemen that are just as fleet as foot as the fellows that they're chasing. You go call and beg you to stop. So this is the police. They command you to stop. That's all you can do. What about the firemen? You gotta go up in the house to save my life. You in the house? I'm coming up on a ladder with a 65, 68-year-old man, and I got somebody on my shoulder coming down. Arthritis hit me in the middle of the ladder. Oh, so we coming down fast now, you know. So these people are taking these steps without
It's
thinking.
serious. It is
You
serious.
know, they don't understand what they're doing. You know, okay, an accountant can work to 90 if your brain keeps intact, but not a
Mm,
fireman, not a policeman,
yeah.
not a sanitation worker, and you have a one size fit all for everything. I
Everything.
happen to know that in St. Lucia, policemen, I think it is after 20 years, son, after 25 years, you can retire a full pension. because at that time you can't run all these young boys. Prison officers, they're in prison and they've got these young fellas coming there. If I push it down, as has happened, and it's currently before the court, you know. But what are we doing? We are not thinking. We are jumping to the wit of the IMF. IMF said this is how you're going to do it. Then you want to argue with them and say no, we can't do that because and the system over the years, Barrow started to create a middle class, and other administrations have continued to help develop this middle class because one thing you had rich and filthy poor. You don't have to do. Barrow created a middle class. If you can attribute anything to Barrow at all, one thing you must attribute to him is that middle class that he developed Barbados. Trust me. And now this government is taking us back to the rich and the filthy poor because they eliminated the middle class. And when you have a situation now, what they have done to people, they are asking civil servants to pay toward a pension that they will not get. Because Stephen here, I'm glad he said, I'm so glad to see you. When you reach retirement age in the public service, you can retire on your pension. Now, and then you will get a pension from the Treasury. But when you reach age 67, that pension is reduced by the amount you get for national insurance. But when you bring all two ages to 68, you are now eliminating your little pension immediately as it becomes due. So you don't get a single penny of your pension. You will get the gratuity, but you will not get any pension. That is what they're doing. So you'll be paying toward a pension that you will not get. Because at 68, national insurance will click in, and you will not get the government pension. Only the people who work for the higher salaries in the public service will then get anything from the Treasury but you are not going to get any money. So you're paying toward a pension that you will not get. And these things went through Parliament. And if the ministers knew anything about public service or knew anything about what they were talking about, they would question this thing, but they just get there with a brief and talk. And the brief, I suspect, is not generated locally. I would have done it for them for free.
Yes, but listen, I want to hear, thank you so much. I want to hear from Mr. Strickland again. There's an issue with his mic, but I want you to talk to Barbadians and about the sick out tomorrow and why and what are your thoughts about that? I want to hear your thoughts about that. Let me see if I can open your mic. Open your mic again, please, sir.
Thank you very much. I'm not certain if I want to speak to the sick out because you see, there is so much victimization in Barbados, both in the public service and in the private sector. We are a very small society, and there's a lot of control which is exhibited right now in Barbados. If you are an appointed officer, you have more of a chance. But because as a temporary officer, your contract of service says 1 day's notice on either side, no matter how many years that you have been working. Employers in Barbados have had opportunity and have exercised that opportunity to, knowing the legal system, the employment rights legislation, whatever else, to put individuals in a very uncomfortable situation. And therefore, as much as I would want to put pressure on government, I am very concerned about those individuals who would make that decision. Now, the fact that this is being discussed openly in Barbados, for any individual who do not report for work tomorrow, no matter what is wrong with them or not, that is going to be seen as if that person is sicking out because of this. And therefore, I am very, very concerned in respect of that. There are two quick issues I want to touch on. The question that Lynette asked about national insurance getting out there and whatever else. Unfortunately, the compliance section of national insurance, in my opinion, is so small because you have one inspector who covers the whole of St. Lucie and part of St. Peter, and there are hundreds of employers, several persons in that one location. So therefore, it is extremely difficult for manually. There need to be a lot of I don't know, town hall meetings. There need to be seminars. There need to be a whole lot whereby employers, several people are brought in and educated about national insurance and so forth. But there's the other issue that I would want to speak to very quickly, because there are a lot of employers, who have the contract of service with the employees that they must retire at 65. Because when the National changed this legislation from 65 to 67, some employers in Barbados did not change theirs, and therefore the staff are forced to retire at 65. That staff, there may not be a pension fund for them. That staff member then is forced to claim 6 months unemployment and then be forced to take an early pension, which they are stuck for the rest of their lives. So those for staff in those companies, they are now looking at a 3-year. Well, it was 2 years, 65 to 67, without an income unless they claim an early pension for survival. And now it's going to be 9% rather than 6%. You're moving now from 67 to 68. So there's 3 years. And therefore, those are the ones that I'm very concerned about also. So this matter of national insurance is very, very deep in the lives of individuals. This is not just legislation. This is deep in the lives of individuals and boys and girls, sons and daughters. Households are going to further feel the pressure, so that when national says it's your lifeline, as much as I believe it to be true, more and more persons are going to have their doubts.
But that is that last point that you raised. I mean, that is, I mean, because I know somebody who retired early, and with the pension that they were getting, they regretted it. So somebody now being forced to do this, I mean, like, so who's speaking on their behalf? Because there's a thing that has happened in Barbados, in that you used to have what they would call a labor movement. But now it seems that it really has to do with trade unions looking out for their members, their own members. But if there are labor issues, they don't seem to be concerned with them. So, you know, I mean, I knew of this problem for a while, because I recall a lady coming to me who said to me she was working in an establishment and the owner used to lock the door because he felt that they would steal something or the other that was in there. So I said to her, well, why don't you go to one of the, I was a minister at the time, to be honest. And I was saying to her, well, certainly that this is something that one of the unions would want to take up. So she said that she did approach the union, but then if she joined the union and they came on her behalf, but then maybe she would lose the job. You see, those are the realities that some people face. And you know, she has her children to send to school. But I would like to think that saying that there was something called a labor movement and that you're concerned with labor issues, that even if it were not a member, it would be something so important that you could still pursue. But you know, you have people now who are left out because they haven't joined the union or something like that. But that issue that you raise is a really critical issue.
It is. I think. Thank you so much, Mr. Strickland, for coming on. We do have the questions are coming, and people are still coming on. The numbers are increasing. We're almost at 700 people on. And there's something Mr. Strickland said. I'm sorry, his mic is scratching up a lot, but you talked about victimization, etc. But I'm wondering. Somebody says here, sir, are you saying Bajans should be scared, stay quiet, and continue to be walked and stomped on? I think that because I know when we open his mic, there's a problem with the mic. But just let me say here that victimization is real. I've experienced that in this country. But I also want to say that there comes a time though that you're going to have to decide, make a decision that listen, you understand that victimization. I think Mrs. Strickland is saying you're going to go in it, go with your eyes wide open and understand that there's a possibility of that. But the question is, are we going to allow that to cause us not to do what we know is the right thing? Are we going to allow, because of that, allow people to stamp on us? When I open my computer and I put on my microphone, Lynette, and I come on here, I understand that. I understand that I'm going to be victimized, and I have been. You understand? But if we keep doing that, if we keep saying we're not going to make a stand, we're not going to take a stand because we're going to be victimized, we are going to be next year, this time, we're going to be talking on here, talking again about another issue because they're going to continue to, as I said, in Bajans parlance, they're going to jobby on you. Okay? They're going to keep doing it. It's going to keep happening. So there has to come a time when you make up your mind. Listen, enough is enough. You reach that point. And I think the point that Mrs. Strickland is making is a valid point, but go in with your eyes wide open. If you allow fear, nothing is going to change. Nothing. Yes? That's just my 2 cents about that. A minute.
No, Marcia, I think too that what you have to be doing, and you can be conscious of doing it, is that you're trying to create a culture now where you don't fear that victimization, where people will get used to the idea that you will protest. I am sure the government and everybody else in France understands that if there's anything that goes wrong, farmers are going to come out with their tractors in the Netherlands and block the whole road. The police isn't going to really arrest anybody because that's part of their culture. In fact, the policeman's father might be one of the people driving the tractors into the city to block the city. They do things like bring a truckload of tomatoes and dump them at Parliament. But that's their culture. They've created that probably over centuries. So we have to build that kind of culture now. Because I notice myself that there are some people who, even in political terms, they strongly support a particular political party, and they still work in the civil service, and they still get their promotions. And people just know, okay, he supports X party, he supports Y party. And they're not victimized really, because it seems as though when you get beyond, there's some threshold that you have to cross.
Yes.
That was in your time. It's not happening now.
That's not happening now.
It's not happening now. You're gonna be a B, or you're not getting promoted.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So I stand corrected. So it means that we have to work even harder.
Yeah,
but creating that culture.
Yeah, Lynette, though, someone is saying that, Lynette, it was part of our foreparents' culture as well. It helped with the abolishment of slavery. And I think this is why I say I don't believe in this passivity. There is something here. There's a history here. It might not have been as many, as Jamaica had, but because you didn't have the opportunity, the place is flat. It didn't mean that you didn't want to. You know,
You can't, there are no hills to run into.
there are no hills to run into. So it's not that you didn't want to. I'm saying that with where we're getting to, we're going to have to, some of us going to get some lashes. But the point is, we're grateful that our foreparents, that they fought so that we could be here today celebrating Emancipation Day. You know, so whether we say we are emancipated or not, the point is that our ancestors died and suffered, and we're going to have to suffer a bit, right? Suffering is part of it. I've been suffering for years because I'm speaking out. You know, we've got to decide that we're going. I see you're smiling there, Caswell. What do you say about this whole thing about people being afraid of being victimized?
The only thing people have to fear is fear itself. Because if you allow that thinking, that mentality to prevail, you will always be afraid. You will always be in stress, and you will die young because the stress will kill you. You have to stand up for yourself sometimes. But people are so used to saying, well, oh, if the unions get this benefit for their workers, I can get it too, so I ain't gonna do nothing.
Yeah.
And the employers and the government and employer like that sort of that type of reason and that kind of mentality, because they can exploit it and use the people who speak like that against the workers. I was telling you one of the other meetings that we had, where we sat down and we planned action the Thursday, and by Thursday evening I can hear a minister of government talking about our action. You know, they're aware of it. As soon as we sit down in a meeting that was supposed to be confidential, one of our loyal people got there, so I figured, well, I'm a beef, so I can call it know that the people can take action. What are you going to do? You're going to stop? They will let you to stop.
The one thing I would say is that there's the fear that people. I remember somebody saying to me sometime that they were in a particular situation, and they were saying that the other people there wouldn't say anything as if they were afraid. And I said to them, they probably were, because it is a fact that when people have risen up in any serious way, the powers that be come down on them very hard. They are, you know, and I spoke about this happening in the 60s and 70s. That's not too long ago. So when you have grandparents and great grandparents saying, "Boy, you better be careful," you know, you talk too much and this thing, it's because they remember that you can be beaten. They remember that you can be thrown into prison. You understand that when you were thrown into prison, you're cut off from all of your supports. It takes a while before you see anybody. They will say that they're carrying out their investigations, and you can only meet with people for 20 minutes or something like that. So I believe that there's a real fear there, but civilizations don't prosper because people live in fear. You really, and it does require some people to be fearless. It does require some. And then there are others who may fear, who might come along. But what I'm saying is that, and across the region, it is the case that people were beaten and they were locked up under that public order legislation that was implemented across the region to do precisely that. And I think somehow it is in the consciousness of grandparents and great grandparents who would be saying, "Boy, you better keep quiet, boy, you don't do that, boy," because they don't want to see you die. They don't want to see you suffer. I think that is a reality. Because sometimes we wonder at why people are afraid. I believe that is there. And this thing, people always say, "Oh, Barbadians wouldn't do anything." But I always think about Trinidad. You know how much oil money Trinidad had? Trinidad had enough oil money to rebuild the whole of Trinidad. Trinidadians marched around the Red House. People stole all the money. They made a few calypsos about it and a few jokes about it. And the country stays the way it is because a few people were allowed to take that oil money that they had. So, like, what's the difference? We didn't have any, but Trinidad didn't benefit to the extent that it should have. So, and Trinidad was severely impacted when you had that uprising in the 70s. A lot of people got killed. A lot of people were just thrown into prison for no reason. So the fear is there, and the fear is there around the region. So basically the politicians in Trinidad would say, oh, well, they're going to march around for like 4 days, and then they still keep on doing whatever it is that they're doing. So it's the same thing across the region. And as I said, if we would work together and stop feeling that one set of people is better than the other, we would be better off.
Correct.
I'll
Correct.
tell
Go
you
ahead.
something.
Yes.
I'll tell you
Yeah,
something,
go
Nicola.
ahead.
I understand everything you said, and I've agreed with what you're saying. But with me, it has been different. Some guys who went to school with me in Vincent could tell you that they said I was like this from the time I was at school. I don't remember me being a rebel at school. I don't think I'm a rebel now. But my protests and my standing speaking up for myself, the only thing it generates now are job offers. They don't victimize me anymore. They try to offer me jobs. So far, I've been offered 4. And
Well, there's probably, as I said, there's probably a threshold.
No, they're not for me because I figure, well, this is my answer to them every time. There's only one thing that I need now. And if you can bribe me with it, I'll take it. Salvation. But it's not for any man to give me. So unless you can provide salvation, you go have anything to offer me. So they can well stop offering, because I'm going to stick where I am on what I'm doing until the Lord takes me home. It's simple as that. So, but people are afraid, and sometimes you get people who come and take the little extra lucre, filthy lucre, because but it don't last. You need to be able to stand up for yourselves and do not allow people to scare you, because bullies thrive on people who are afraid of them. If a fellow's a bully and he bullies you and you take it, he can bully you some more. Start at one store, man. You're going to see him find somebody to bully him, because you're going to find somebody else. He's not going to trouble you anymore. But people apparently people so I don't have to like being bullied, or they tolerate it because for some other reason. No, stand up. These people are bullies. You're seeing them behaving like bullies now. Only a bully would do what they did in the house on Friday. So tell them we can't stand for this. That's all.
The small point I wanted to make too about the consultations is that, if somebody, suppose I've gone to the consultations, you still really can't comment on anything until you see it in the form of the bill.
Last couple of days.
Yeah, I mean, you could talk as much as you like, and you could put as much as you like in the policy paper. You could put a policy paper to me, but if I haven't seen the legislation, I actually don't know for a fact what you're proposing. You only know when it comes in the legislation, and then even in the legislation, only partly so. So, they're saying that they've consulted widely and all that. Was that consulting on the bill? If it only just came out in the so
they just read it in Parliament on Friday. So what I don't understand. And that's part of what this whole show is about. We're just saying, there's just a big disrespect and a disregard for Barbadians, and it is important that we speak up and really say, listen, we put you there. We're the ones who put you there, and I'm hoping Barbadians, regardless of the party, BDQRSP, whatever, don't do that again. Please don't do that again. Look at what has happened. Now tomorrow we don't know what's going to happen because there are no opposition senators there, so we don't know. And even if there were last time, there were what, two? It can't really do much. So so tomorrow is coming up, and for those persons, you sit down and you weigh the cost, right? But everything in life, there is a cost, there is a sacrifice, every single thing. In Jamaica, I think they say it in Barbados too, if you want good, your nose have to run. Somebody, our ancestors got some beatings in their back, yeah, and some of them died. Okay, and some in this, some people, some of us are going to have to face some kind of backlash for it, but we have to stand up for our own dignity, our human dignity, right? We have to stand up for our generations. We have to stand up. So everybody on here, I give you literally 1 minute, because it's 9:51. We're gonna finish now. 1 minute to say something else to the people of Barbados. Everybody on here, okay? So Winston, you go 1 minute, and then I'm just gonna go down to Miss McLean, and we go. Caswell will have the last say, okay? The last word. Go ahead, Winston. 1 minute. You're muted.
Okay, all I'm saying is I want everyone not to be afraid. If we continue thinking in that mindset, we will never accomplish anything. There were people like that back in the times of Martin Luther King, etc., Mahatma Gandhi. And if folk taking the first step, we will never finish any journey. We need to come out tomorrow, stand up for what is rightfully ours. You're not asking because it's all right. You're taking what is rightfully yours. Just stay home. Okay, just stay home. That's all I'm asking. Stick out tomorrow. Stick out tomorrow. That's all I'm saying. All right. Have a good night, everyone.
Yes, thank you. Well, thank you, Winston. Miss McLean.
I want to say that first I want to thank you again for providing Barbadians with the opportunity to address this issue. And I want to speak directly to the Prime Minister of Barbados. She's the Minister of Finance. She's been going out around the world saying to the world that she is championing all kinds of causes, but there is a significant contradiction here on the ground. We in Barbados are being asked to accept shabby treatment from her because she's Prime Minister, leader, in head of government. We are asking you to come to the people and tell us in a substantive, honest, right, frank, open, transparent, whatever you want to describe it with, what exactly you're being proposed. What transpired in Parliament was a sham, and if it continues in the Senate tomorrow, it will be the same thing. You have taken, or you're proposing to take decisions, and you are going against all that you said. I am not prepared to sit down and watch you, because at the end of the day, we have to represent what is in our best interest. We may not have voices inside there to challenge what happens. And even if you did, because it takes a simple majority to pass certain pieces of legislation, once government is present in the House and in the Senate, if there were others, it would happen. But we are saying enough is enough. If you're trying to present to the world that we do things in Barbados a certain way, demonstrate it on the ground, come to the people and share exactly what is proposed, explain to people. If there's consultation, let it be meaningful, let it be substantive, and not be simple form. Because in the absence of that, you are not doing what you have been chosen to do and what you say you're planning to do.
Thank you, Ms. McLean, and thank you for being on. Mr. Strickland. Okay, you're unmute, sir. Unmute. Yes.
I want to jump with Ms. McLean, because as far as I'm concerned, 30 elected parliamentarians sold me out. My representative for the parish of St. Lucie, as far as I'm concerned, sold me out. The fact that I was invited to a town hall meeting and you asked for my opinion and it was ignored, it says to me that I do not matter. I'm not one of these persons who, in other words, I think for those persons who believe that I was saying that, intimidation, whatever else, I have always spoken out because my mother was an individual that spoke out even when she was working on the plantation. For tomorrow, um, I believe that the die might have been cast, but the question is whether we can still march, we can still do whatever we need to do after that, before it is gazetted. And therefore, I don't believe that tomorrow is the end, even if those independent senators and the two other senators, the question is, what will they say tomorrow? If they will remain quiet, like maybe the majority of those of the 30. And I believe that the time has come for us to say to Barbadians, this is who we are. And as a result, not just the 30 that sit in Parliament, but all of those who seek election, they need to recognize that we as Barbadians, we are far from satisfied with the political climate in Barbados. And I really want to thank you for giving me the opportunity also to share tonight.
Okay, so I want to start by thanking Marcia and thanking all of the panelists because I've learned a lot from you. Um, I do want to say to Barbadians that, I mean, like myself, there's nobody for me to call in order to go on a sick out. But you can think in your own way what you can do to show that you are acting in solidarity with those who will do it. You can write a senator, you can write your member of parliament, you can go down to the parliament on your own. We're not going in a group or anything, but it has been the norm that people go down to parliament when parliament is open. So there's nothing wrong with individuals doing that once you're not congregating. So that can be done. I want to say to the members of parliament, those who sit in the lower house, some of you, I know some of you, and I've seen for a while now that it has become the norm that you just rush legislation through the house when many of you know, you actually know better, and you are actually taught why you don't rush it through the house. You were taught that it has to be circulated to the people first before you debate it. You were taught that. And now all of those things, it seems as though you are ignoring. And that is very disappointing to me because, there are individuals that I know who are in both parties. And the individuals that I know, I expect them to operate according to a high standard. That's what I expected, to be honest. Whatever your political affiliation is, I expect a certain standard. And I have been disappointed and I've been let down by that. To the senators, however you were appointed, I believe that you have a duty to the people of Barbados. I believe that you have a duty to me. The same way that you decided to reject the first Integrity in Public Life bill, this one can be rejected as well, and they can reel and come again. There are, if this were a fund that was quietly being managed without being dipped into, without money being written off. And then we had come to this point simply because of circumstances. My position might be different, but that isn't what happened. And now that you look at the new legislation, it looks as though worse might come. So we need to speak out now. This is one of the what I guess we will call a gold standard, the NIS scheme. We've always been proud of it. Everybody doesn't have an NIS scheme like this. We've been proud of it. And it would be very disappointing to me if an institution like this one was undermined, and God help us if it is destroyed. So we have to do whatever we can tomorrow. Everybody might not be able to do the same thing, but you have to do something, even if it is to put a post on Facebook, if it is to send out a WhatsApp message, if it is to send out a voicemail, if it is to wear a black armband, if it is to put up a poster on your house saying no to the pension bill, whatever you can do, please do it to send a message. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Lynette. Someone all through the night had been proposing an online petition, and so Caswell, we will present that to you, and to see how and anybody who wants to support to offer administrative help with these kinds of things, the online petition. So they're asking for the sick out, the online petition. As Mr. Strickland said, tomorrow is not the end, right? We have the sick out, the online petition, and on March. I know that, and people have been asking for these things. Lynette is talking about going to writing your NP, and we have to determine what is it we're asking for. We're asking, definitely, we don't want this thing passed tomorrow. And if it's passed, we want a halt to it. You know that they need to stop in their tracks. I think those are some of the things that we are asking. We are asking for consultation with the people. Coming to discuss the matter with the people. I know that they had some of that before, and they haven't listened to it. But we need to demand all of these things. Okay.
And Marcia, bear in mind that I believe that the 30 members of parliament, they have WhatsApp chats that they belong to. And some of the people listening, they are in the WhatsApp groups. So that is where they can make their suggestions to their MP. The same way that they use them to give you messages, you can give them back messages.
Correct. Social media, use it as much as possible, and get on the brass tacks. Keep brass tacks going, guys. Keep it going. They get it in the day and in the night, and we just keep pushing, not giving up. All right. Before Mr. Franklin speaks, someone is asking, can anyone here offer assistance to anyone who's victimized? And I think, is there a cell number that they can call that they feel that they're being victimized in any way?
256.
Okay, so here we go. Here's a number. This is a number I'm putting up, 256
4706. That is what I do.
256 20.
No, 256 4706.
4706.
If
Right.
you are victimized, and there is a law against victimization and harassment and stuff, if I don't get the then it's not one way, we'll get it the next. And I don't like to boast, but I've been fairly successful at the Labor Department. When people come and complain about dismissal and other things that they get from their employers. So that's my number. Call me. It is not a secret number. Share it around.
I'm glad the person raised that, because I was going to say at one point that when people, sometimes these fears are justified. Suppose it's a young woman with 3 children in school, and suddenly she's not earning an income. I think that we have to be prepared to assist in cases like that as well. when called upon.
Yes. Yes. Yes, and that is the kind of talk, Lynette, I love that. That is what that, and I'm so happy Mr. Strickland brought that up. It's the elephant in the room, and he brought it up tonight. I'm
Yes.
glad that he did. But if we go off the heritage of our ancestors, we're going to go up there. We're going to take care of each other. That's why we could say happy Emancipation Day today. Yeah, that's why we were able to do it. All of our grandparents, all of our ancestors, and I'm glad Mrs. Strickland raised it up, as I said. And Lynette, that's an excellent suggestion. Call 256-4706 if feel that you're being victimized. But
That's also on WhatsApp, no?
that's it. Can also do one WhatsApp, okay?
That is the
And
level of AI technology, you know.
yes,
So when people are talking about online petitions, even though I support them and that kind of stuff, it is not something that I can do or I do. You know, I am not let's say I'm
listen, we're going to support you,
talented
Mr.
in that
Franklin. I believe people are going to call. They're going to call and they're going to support you. I'm going to also, if anybody who wants to help with the online petition, give me a call 236-7000. WhatsApp me if you can help. It takes a village. It takes all of us, right, Winston?
Right. That's correct.
It takes
And
all of us. Yes,
And
and
some
what?
people
Caldwell,
have done the online
yeah.
petition before, so some people know very well how to
They
do it.
know what to do. So
Um,
we
well,
can't leave
I'm
everything
not
up
one
to
of
I've
those.
Mr.
done,
That's
Franklin.
why it
I've,
never
I've,
comes to me.
I've done them. I've done quite a few. So
What I'm telling you, like for instance, with this one, I was so glad I spoke with Marcia because I have a Zoom account that they're gonna make me pay taxes on now too. And I was planning to go out there and have Zoom sessions with people. After we spoke to Marcia, we decided we're gonna do it on her show. Her show already has following rather than me and my foolishness. I thought it would be better to I don't want to say use Marcia. Well,
No, no, you know what? But I was the one who called you. Remember?
yeah,
So and we're not at all. This is what
yeah.
we do.
So,
This
so
is
I
what
said,
we
well,
do.
I was very happy, and she readily agreed that we will go down this way, and I'm very thankful for her. You see, but she has done so much service to this country already. She said she wasn't born here and stuff, and she's not. But you're Bajan, don't worry, you're Bajan. Trust me.
Yes,
The
I'm a
only,
Bajan, and I'm
the,
a Bajan, and nobody not going to step on me.
She fell in love with a Bajan and she's here and she's very much 100% Bajan.
you know,
Listen,
you see, and I tell
listen.
you, you people like you are unsung heroes. You don't get the Barbados service star, Barbados this and all kind of stuff, but you are doing more for people in this country than a lot of people who got these awards. Trust me when I tell you so. And this country owe you a debt.
But as I said, I open up my computer and I come on because I just don't, Lynette knows and Miss McLean know me a little bit. I hate injustice. I just cannot stand it. And I don't, and that's what I do. So it's not, that's it. That's it. And I'm praying that I know that Bajans are going to they're standing up. They're standing up. They're standing up. Over to you, Mr. Franklin, and we close. But thank you.
I'm not going to be long. I was here since 7, and you know, I am heartened by the responses that we've been getting. And I said I can do WhatsApp a lot. Well, I was a WhatsApper for the whole day. I was planning to get some rest today, but I was responding to queries and questions and suggestions from people who are telling me, yes, they're supporting me in this venture. They want this thing done and all kind of stuff. And so I am grateful to those people who've reached out to let me realize that my efforts were not in vain and encouraged me to ignore the detractors because there are many, and the detractors who are hired. They hire their own people to attack anything that is progressive that they don't agree with. So I'm grateful for that. My only thing is, I would be happy, extremely happy, if Barbadians stand up for themselves. I don't mind helping you to stand up or stand up for you, but I would like to stand up with you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we're going now. I'd like to stand up with you. Unfortunately, I can't call in sick tomorrow because I let Lynette be in a similar position, you know, and plus I work for myself, you know, but
Yes.
and I am
Likewise.
not taking the calling anything lightly. I reviewed it, and I think that this is the best option right now. Look, some people will argue, oh, and they're quoting law things that are not the law, and telling people, oh, the law says you must do this, the law says you must do that. That's not true. And you have a brand doctor certificate. That is not true either. The only way that that is required is if you were sick on Friday. Then you are going to get a doctor certificate if you call in sick tomorrow. Don't let people fool you. Your enemies will not give you the best advice to fight them. All right? And that's what's happening. They're misleading you. I
Mm-hmm.
pledge that I will never mislead you knowingly. Thank you very much for having me with you. And I rest my case. We will have to wait and see if the government decides that they will do the decent thing for a change.
Yes, thank you all so very much. We're all watching and seeing, and watch this space. Watch this space because whatever that announcement is, I'm telling you, we're gonna respond. We're going to respond. We're not going to just, nobody's going to trample upon us. Okay. So, guys, God bless you all. And we just want to bless everybody. We prayed for Caswell last night and we pray for everybody. We want to pray for everybody who's going to make a decision tomorrow. Everyone who's making a decision tomorrow on the sick out, we bless them and we pray for protection over them. I'm praying. I'm a Christian from Christian faith, and my brother there, Winston, is he is a Muslim. Somebody else might be Rastafari, ISIS is. Everybody, we pray to God, and we are praying and asking God for protection over everyone. We come against a spirit of fear and doubt and victimization, and we thank God that Barbadians are going to stand up strong and firm and bold. We thank God for Miss Lynette Eastman, who showed by example tonight, closing her business. And we pray that there will be others who will stand up strong and pick up that spirit of the ancestors, of their ancestors, and decide to go out and make a difference and make their voices heard. We bless you tonight in the name of the Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Bye bye.
Good night.
Amen.
Yes, bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye.